I would like to welcome you all to this Innovation for Inclusive Development seminar, which is hosted by the DSI in collaboration with ASSAf. My name is Melusi Twala, and today I'll be your program director facilitating the flow of today's agenda. I am from the Academy of Science of South Africa, and it is my pleasure today to welcome everybody to this seminar. So the DSI undertakes IID learning interventions in various forms, including seminars, to bring together various sectors and stakeholders to engage on innovations that seek to promote inclusive development. Through a number of projects, the DSI demonstrates how innovative technology solutions can be applied to improve the state's capacity to deliver services, essentially touching the lives of citizens. In today's instance, the learning intervention focuses on the integration of science, technology, and innovation STI solutions in local economic development. Specifically, the District Development Model, the DDM, which was approved by Cabinet in 2019, was crafted to break down silos in government. This is a challenge that was identified at strategic level, but also it was crafted to synchronize the planning of service delivery by all government spheres, as well as government entities to focus at municipal level, predominantly with the strategic goal to enhance entrepreneurship and economic development. Furthermore, the DDM facilitates the involvement of citizens, business, and civil society in service delivery planning. This tool is such a priority tool such that even the presidency prioritizes the DDM. In exactly a week's time, President Ramaphosa and his delegation will host the DDM Presidential Imbizo at Mpumalanga province, where they will engage the citizens of the province to reflect on progress made with regards to the influence of the DDM model. And I thought I'll just bring that context to this, to open this seminar. And with that, I would like to welcome opening remarks from Professor Himla Sudial, who's an executive officer at the Academy of Science of South Africa. Himla, over to you.
Thank you, Melusi. Good morning, colleagues, and my special welcome to our panelists here today from the DSI and other stakeholders. It is indeed a pleasure for us, as Melusi has alluded, to be in partnership with the Department of Science and Innovation in hosting this very well-timed webinar. This administration of government has been punting for interventions linked with the promotion of the district development model. And we as the Academy have been asked to serve as a secretariat for the various DSI entities that will speak about some of the work that they are doing, among others. But when you look at it, as Dr. Twala has mentioned, that when we look at how our society is structured, that the coalface of where our people, all of us, reside, our first contact with governance is at the local municipality level. So when we have problems with our roads, with other types of infrastructure, then we try to bring that to the attention first and foremost of our local administration. They in turn are linked at the provincial and ultimately at the national level. So for us to be efficient in servicing our communities at large, there needs to be a very eloquent chain of command and execution of duties and accountability from the local governmental levels all the way to national. And I am sure we're going to hear today how some of this plays out in the reality of life in present-day South Africa. So I am not going to take up too much of time because, like you, I am excited to hear from our different colleagues how all of this is playing out in contemporary South Africa. For us to have a South Africa that we are all proud of, despite many, many challenges that we have faced in the last couple of years, we want to be able to pull our shoulders to the wheel and ensure that as the wheel turns, we turn in the right direction, forward thinking, to create a better environment and place for all of us and future generations to live in. So with that, I want to acknowledge all participants who are panelists, as well as the participants, I see the numbers are over 100 at the moment, who are joining in with us so that you can appreciate some of the work that is happening in this space. Thank you very much, Melusi, and back to you.
Thanks a lot, Himla, for those opening remarks. You know, in the spirit of the DDM being an inclusive model, being a multi-stakeholder model, you'll notice today that we've got various government departments from the DSI, from COGTA, from municipalities that will be presenting today. But we've also got various entities of the government that are within the science, technology, and innovation ecosystem that will also be engaging us through the presentations that they will provide. So our next speaker today will be Mr. Ashley Losh, who comes from COGTA, where he serves as the Director for Intergovernmental Relations. Ashley, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues. I will just upload my presentation. I assume I should do that.
Audio is good, video is good, Ashley.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can. You can just put it on presentation mode, but we can see it on our side.
Okay, thanks, Chairperson, and thanks for the invitation. So I was just asked to give you a high-level overview of the district development model. And first, I must say, when I looked through the program of today, I got very excited. I got so excited that I had to share my excitement with my DG last night, because I think this is the kind of conversation, practical conversation, that we need to have, especially in the current stage of the institutionalization and implementation of the DDM, because now we in the process of really practicalizing the DDM as an approach to fostering intergovernmental cooperation and collaboration. But my presentation, Chairperson, and I know we are quite time bound, will be focusing on 4 key aspects of the DDM, and that is really just to give you a snapshot on what's the main principles and elements of the model as an approach. And you, Chairperson, in your opening remarks alluded to some of those elements. And then I want to actually go into some of the key features of the institutionalization of the DDM, because this is where we are at the moment. And then look at some of the key achievements in the implementation of the DDM, coupled with some of the lessons learned from the DDM pilot sites. And then I will just share some views on what are the next steps in terms of the institutionalization of the model. This, I think, we are, as practitioners, we are quite fairly aware of in terms of what the model is trying to achieve. And again, this is just a high-level summary of the specific objectives and principles of the model. But it's really, as you also indicated, Chairperson, it's a new integrated planning model for cooperative governance, which in essence try to foster an integrated and district based delivery model. So it's basically ensuring that cooperative governance through intergovernmental cooperation and coordination is improved and strengthened. And another key aspect of this objective is that it uses the district and metro geographic spaces as the spaces in the areas for the implementation of the model as an approach, but also ensuring the intergovernmental coordination and cooperation using the geographical spaces as defined districts and metro. So it's not, and we always get this, it's not linked solely to metro and district municipalities as a form of government, but it's using the geographical spaces for the implementation of this approach. But key to that is that the DDM validates local government as an epicenter for development. And this is again using the local government geographical space as the epicenter for the implementation of this model. But as you also indicated in the opening remarks, Chair, the overall strategic objective of the DDM is firstly to address the silos in the planning, budgeting, and implementation processes, maximizing the impact and alignment of all the development plans that we find across the three spheres of government, but also aligning the relevant resources to those plans by using the one district, one plan, and one budget scenario and narrative. But importantly, as the Prof also indicated in her opening remarks, is really also then to narrow the distance between the people and government by strengthening the coordination role and capacities at the district geographic space and metro space. I'm not going to go into detail in this slide, but the key message here, chairperson and delegates, is that we are following a phased approach. Over the last few months, we as COGTA have been confronted by numerous calls and arguments from practitioners across the three spheres of government saying that DDM has been in existence for just over 2 years. So where are the tangible practical results and impact that this DDM promises to deliver? So our argument is always been that you need to follow a phased approach, and this slide illustrates where we started back in 2019 with the establishment of the DDM as an approach, and there was a number of conceptual work that were done under that phase, which came to an end in March 2020, and then we moved into the piloting of the DDM. As we are all aware that there are 3 DDM pilots launched by the Honorable President of the Republic back in 2020. The one is Waterberg district in Limpopo province. The next district is the Owatambo district in the Eastern Cape. And then we have one metropolitan municipality, which is the eThekwini municipality in KZN. So those were the 3 pilots that were launched back in 2020, and that formed part of the piloting of the DDM. In my own views, I see these pilots and the relevance of these pilots to be learning sites, because never before had we embarked on such a detailed, integrated approach to ensure that all of government actually contributes its resources and align its plans to the respective challenges and needs that exist in these spaces. So we had to have pilot sites where we could extract experiences and learning and lessons learned in terms of how we can improve the DDM going forward. So where we are at the moment is we are in the process of, or we started the process of institutionalizing the DDM. And there are a number of indicators that we set ourselves as targets to achieve under this particular phase. And you would see that this phase commenced in April 2021 last year, and we envisage ourselves to be working in this phase up until March 2025, because there's quite a number of actions and activities that need to be achieved and milestones that need to be achieved in this phase, which we already embarked upon, and later in the presentation I will give some of those milestones that have been achieved. And then we move on to the fourth phase, which deals with the sustainability of not just the DDM as an approach, but the key objective there is also to ensure that there's a degree of institutional and financial sustainability in the local government sector. But a rider here and a footnote here is we are currently reviewing the underpinning strategic objectives and focus areas in the institutionalization phase, which obviously will have an impact on the sustainability phase when we get to that phase. So context dictates and experiences dictate and impacts and influences how we continue with the institutionalization of the DDM, and therefore it's required and there's a need for us to constantly review the milestones and the indicators, so to be in line with the overall objective of the DDM. This is some of the critical success factors and enablers that I've listed. The DDM concept document, as was approved by Cabinet back in 2019, lists much more of these factors and enabling tools and frameworks. But a key critical success factor is COGTA's internal DDM realignment and focus. COGTA is tasked with the overall coordination of the implementation of the DDM. Therefore, COGTA internally need to align and strengthen its own strategic operations and strategic processes to be in line with the DDM. And this is also a requirement by extension, and a requirement for all of government to start looking at how they internally realign their strategic priorities, strategic plans, and focus areas. But that is what COGTA need to do as part of this critical success factors. Then we need a whole of government buy-in. This has been done over the last 20 to 24 months through various engagements of various platforms at national, provincial, and at local government level. And I will talk a bit more about that later in the presentation. We need leadership and guidance from a technical level, but also from a political point of view. We need to start thinking spatial, referencing our programs and our projects, which in turn will influence how our budgets are being spatialized. And that is also one of the key challenges identified in the National Development Plan, for example, and is one of the key founding principles of the DDM as well. How do we spatially reference and spatially contextualize our plans and by implication our budgets? Opportunities for reflection, hence the constant consideration and reconsideration and review by COGTA on the objectives and the milestones underpinning those four phases that I've mentioned previously. So we need to reflect what is working, what is not working, and how do we improve on that. But again, it's not COGTA sitting in its own corner doing this level of reflection. We are doing that, and we need to strengthen this reflection process by involving national, provincial, and local government partners, but also non-governmental stakeholders in their processes. Credible data and evidence-based planning. This is one of the key success factors, but also one of the key outcomes of the lessons learned in the 3 pilots through the evaluation study that COGTA, in partnership with the Development Bank of Southern Africa, has done, that we need to get to the point where we can say the data that we present and base our plans on are credible and that are evidence-based and evidence focused. We have seen in the 1 plans that we've been assessing up until now that this is still one of the red flags, so to speak, that has been popping up in most of the 1 plans that have been assessed. Process management and joint planning facilitation is another success factor. Some of the enablers, referring to tools, frameworks, and systems, we need to have the DDM information management system that is aligned and linked with other existing information management systems that is currently existing in government. We are in the process of developing such a system. We are quite advanced in the developing the system, which we've done with our partners, DBSA, DPME, and other partners, Stats SA, etc. Stakeholder management and communications framework and plans, those are frameworks and tools that we've developed, but we've seen that as critical enablers as well, and how we manage risk and expectations is important, and we've developed a risk management register as well. So again, to reiterate the point that the DDM is anchored in the 1 plan, and the 1 plan in simple terms, and I hope it's simple terms, is in the governmental plan that sets out long-term development initiatives and trajectory for the district and metro transformation. So it's a long-term plan. In many cases, we are talking 25 years onwards plans, and this stems from one of the observations that was made by the National Development Plan, that we need to start thinking beyond the 5-year planning period and planning cycle. So to ensure that there is a degree of consistency in the system, and that we don't have an abrupt break every 5 years, but that we have a continuous planning flow and a planning system beyond the 5 years. And this is exactly what the 1 plan aims to achieve. The 1 plan comprises out of 6 transformational areas, and those are the topics and the headings listed in the diagram. But it's important to note that the 1 plan and the 6 transformational areas does not deal with non-strategic aspects that each of the existing plans may cover. And this is something that we always get in terms of what's the difference, or what is the relationship between a 1 plan and an integrated development plan at the municipal level. The municipal level at the IDPs deals with your 5-year strategic priorities broken down in annual plans, where most of them can be considered as non-strategic priorities, whilst the one plan, it's, as I indicated, is much more, it's a longer term orientated and longer term focus beyond the 5 years of IDPs. So this is this explanation of each of the 6 transformational areas. The first is the district profiling, which we have completed back in 2021 with the assistance of a number of national departments. And this was just to understand what is the realities, what is the context in each of these district spaces and metro spaces. And we used that those district profiles as a platform and the basis and as a framework for the development of the other pillars of the one plan. So we deemed it necessary, and it was considered important to have a sense of what are the advantages, what are the challenges or competitive advantages and challenges, and the makeup, the socioeconomic makeup of each of these districts and the metros, so to inform how the other 5 pillars would look like going forward, and how those challenges in particular could be addressed from a intergovernmental perspective. The other pillar is the economic positioning, governance and financial management, spatial restructuring, integrated service provision, and infrastructure re-engineering. The last two we've grouped together because there's a very strong causal link between the two, because it really deals with how much do we invest in infrastructure, not just in delivering of new infrastructure, but also in the maintenance of current and existing infrastructure that will then have a spin-off effect in terms of how services are delivered to households and businesses. From an institutionalization perspective, as I indicated previously, the Minister of COGTA is tasked with the overall coordination of the implementation of the DDM, and therefore COGTA is expected to enable integrated planning and delivery in the district and metro spaces. But critical, what I highlight there is COGTA's biggest responsibility is to make sure that all sectors, government and society, participate in the DDM, and that we play a very strong coordination role in the institutionalization of the DDM, but also in the implementation of the DDM through the development of the one plans firstly, and the implementation of the catalytic projects identified in each of these one plans. Then lastly, we have appointed the Development Bank of Southern Africa to act as an implementing agent for the rollout of the DDM in the 3 DDM pilots only. So they are a very key partner in assisting us and supporting us in the implementation of the DDM in those 3 pilot sites, but also extracting key lessons and experiences from those sites. So this is just what I thought was necessary to highlight what's the role of national and provincial sector departments. This is still a big discussion topic, and this was one of the key challenges identified through the quality assurance processes of the one plans, that sector departments in particular are not clear in terms of what is their contribution and their responsibilities and roles in TDM generally, but specifically in the development of the one plan and the subsequent implementation of those one plans. But it's really just to set aside and avail human resources to participate in the development of one plan. We use the word senior officials to participate in the one plan development, and then also participate in the various intergovernmental coordination and planning structures at the national, provincial, and at the district metro level. I have a slide, a flow diagram rather, depicting the various intergovernmental coordination and planning structures in which national and provincial sector departments should participate. Ensure that the implementation commitments in each district and metro spaces are incorporated and inform their strategic plans and annual performance plans. So it's important to have this upward link into the various departments' strategic plans and annual performance plans. Departmental communication strategies and plans must include the DDM. Chairperson, I must say that in what I've seen in most departments' communication plan strategies, this is starting to become a reality where departments are actually going out and communicating the DDM as an approach, but also how they have aligned their plans and their internal operations with the DDM and the DDM principles and vision. Departments must develop comprehensive communication plan that is linked up with the previous point that I've made. And the DDM communication must be dovetailed into ongoing departmental programs and standardizing item of reporting in the monthly cluster reports and other reports that are required from these departments. That is slowly but surely starting to become a reality, and departments are starting to find their feet, so to speak, in getting the DDM communication aligned with those reporting processes. Another key aspect of the institutionalization of the DDM is the role of the DDM, the national DDM political champions. This is also an aspect of the institutionalization of the DDM that's slowly but surely starting to be cemented within the various departments' operations and work. But it's in summary, political champions have been appointed by the president to act as intergovernmental levers and support to the unblocking of intergovernmental blockages and challenges that are experienced in the different district and metro spaces, but also in more specifically unblocking those intergovernmental challenges that are experienced in the implementation of various projects and programs. So simply put, that is the primary role of the political champions as appointed by the president. Key here also is that, and this is a point that we've made last week at the FOSSAT meeting, that directors general should also allocate themselves within the DDM district and metro spaces of their respective political principles. The reason for that is that political champions have approached COGTA asking what support can COGTA provide, technical support that COGTA can provide to or in support of their work as political champions of the DDM. And the best approach that we could find was that the respective DGs should actually accompany and be present and active in those spaces, but also bringing along the required technical skills and support that the political champion might require, and indicating what other support would be required then from other departments, especially from COGTA. But that would be then the start of providing support to political champions. The district development hubs, I'm not going to say too much about this. Currently, we have 3 district development technical support hubs in the 3 DDM pilot sites. And this is just a functional network consisting out of various technical skills and expertise that are in shortage in those districts and metro spaces. And those skill shortages have been identified through the district profiling processes, but also through the development of the one plan processes. What we are currently doing, what we're currently doing as COGTA, we have started to reconceptualize the DDM hubs establishment concept. We do have a revised concept, and this concept was by and large informed, or the reconceptualization of the DDM hub were by and large informed by the experiences and lessons learned in the 3 pilot sites with regard to and with respect to the functioning and the relevance of these DDM hubs. So we are considering embarking on a new approach in establishing these hubs, but that will be done in collaboration with national and provincial sector departments and other stakeholders. And it will differ from province to province, from district to district, and metro to metro. But key here, Chairperson, is, and I need to underscore this, that sectors where the national provincial will play a critical role in availing staff with required skills to form part of the DDM hubs, to form part of that functional network of support. We would rely heavily on this national provincial sector departments in availing staff with the relevant skills. So we're not bringing in new staff, we're not bringing in new people, but we're saying, how do we organize the expertise and skills existing at national and provincial departments to form that particular functional network of support. This is just a high-level rooftop view of the intergovernmental landscape of the DDM. And the key message here, Chairperson, is that yes, we will have DDM technical committees at the provincial level and at the district or metro level, but it's not disjointed from the current legislated IGR structures. And this diagram, this flow diagram, is really just to depict and highlight how these structures will fit into each other and what the relationship between the DDM technical structures would be with the legislated IGR structures. On the national level, and this is maybe one point I should make as well, on the national level, you would see there's a presidential steering committee, that's a technical committee, but there's also what we call a DDM Implementation Coordination Committee. And this committee we have created consisting out of selected DGs, national DGs and provincial DGs that will assist COGTA in exercising and executing its DDM implementation coordination role at a technical level. Simply put, this structure would bring relevant DGs together to discuss and agree various challenges and successes in terms of that are experienced with regard to the implementation of the DDM. But key here is to make sure that there are there are sectoral buy-in and commitments made by these DGs in the development of the one plan, but secondly, commitments are made to the catalytic projects that are identified in the different one plans. So that would then assist COGTA firstly to exercise its coordination role on bringing the sectors together, but secondly to ensure that there is a commitment and buy-in in terms from the sectors in terms of the various commitments that are made in those various one plans. This is just a high-level summary of some of the key interventions and catalytic projects coming from the three pilot sites. And this is in essence what the one plans aim to achieve. The one plan aims to just be a dashboard, a mirror of what are the key catalytic projects in each of these district and metro spaces. Who are the lead departments? Who are the contributing departments? What are the resources allocated to these various catalytic projects, the timeframes, and importantly, what would be the development impact of each of these catalytic projects. So this is just a high-level summary of some of the key interventions and catalytic projects that are coming out from these pilot sites. But this is really the intention of the one plan. So I'm not going to go into all of those things. Here's just a summary of key lessons extracted and learned in the three pilot sites. As I said earlier on, Chairperson, that we are finalizing a DDM evaluation study, which will have much more precise and detailed information in the study. So once approved, that study will then also be made available. But that study and the recommendations and lessons learned as documented in that study will then be a guide for COGTA. How do we improve on the institutionalization of DDM, not just in the three pilots, but in the other DDM spaces as well. But what I want to highlight here again, Chairperson, and I can't emphasize and underscore this more, that the participation of the national and provincial sector departments in the development of the one plan has been very poor for a number of reasons. But as I summarized previously, was that national and provincial departments are saying, how do we, what is expected of us in practical terms, but also we got that from our private sector partners as well, where they were asking similar questions. How do we get involved, and at what level do we get involved in the DDM, especially the development of the one plans? So we have developed various guidelines and frameworks that would provide that kind of detail and clarity. And I think this is moving towards the end, Chairperson. This is just some of a high-level summary of the key milestones and achievements that we have achieved to date. Like I mentioned, there have been a number of guidelines and frameworks developed and issued by COGTA over the last year or so, which is in line with the DDM implementation framework. And we have that framework as well, which outlines the key aspects of the institutionalization of the DDM. But linked to that framework, a key initiative that we are busy with is the development of regulations. Again, COGTA has been confronted with a point of what is the legal framework for the DDM. And what we have done as a department and as the custodian of the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act, we have looked at some of the empowering provisions in the current Act. And what we have all agreed was that Section 47 of the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act gives certain mandates and instructions to the Minister of COGTA to issue guidelines and regulations. And the one regulation or stipulation in the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act that we found quite relevant and applicable to the institutionalization and framing of the DDM was Section 47(1)(b). That regulation or those regulations are due to be gazetted for public comment, and then after it will then be gazetted fully for implementation, and that would then be the legal framework, so to speak, for the implementation of the DDM. There are other M&E frameworks that we have developed, IMS, the Information Management System, that we are currently developing. So this is just some of the key achievements that we've achieved to date, but also in the process of finalizing. And this is in my last slide, Chairperson, some of the key focus areas going forward that we are busy doing and undertaking at the moment, and in the process of finalizing. And these are all part of the overall institutionalization of the DDM. So it relates to the finalizing of the quality assurance of the one plans. Because remember, I said the DDM is based on the implementation of the one plan, to the gazetting of the Section 47 regulations, the finalization of the review of the DDM hubs concept and the actual implementation of those hubs, working with relevant national, provincial, and local government partners. But that we will also, lastly, Chair, in conclusion, provide ongoing support to provinces, to national departments, and to local government stakeholders with the institutionalization of the DDM. But that will happen, and that will be framed using the various intergovernmental platforms that we have put in place and that we will put in place. So with that, Chair, I thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ashley. Thanks a lot for setting this scene, just by giving that historical and detailed context of the DDM. And I don't think it could have come from a better angle rather than from COGTA. Your presentation really gave us an illustration of how DDM enhances coordination and service delivery planning, monitoring and evaluation across government departments as well as entities. And most importantly, your emphasis on that there's actually just one plan for each district and metro through which all government spheres have to contribute into. I would like to apologize. We've run a bit of ahead of time in this case, but we can make some adjustments. I really didn't want to cut, this detailed contextualization of the DDM, and we can afford just maybe one or two questions. I'd like also to bring to the attention of the attendees that the Q&A box is available where we want to raise questions during the, during the presentations. And at this stage, I do not see any that have been raised with regards to the presentation that was given by Ashley, but I would like to quickly welcome one or two questions, please, from all the attendees.
Okay, there is a hand from Sibusiso Mtungwa and from Moses Munyaka. Maybe you will not be able to see the hands, but I'm able to see them.
Oh, apologies, I didn't see them, but thanks for that. If we can start in that order, please. The questions? Go ahead, please. Ephraim, since you can see the questions, if you can deliver them, please, speedily.
I'm not able to see the question. I wanted to inform Sibiso that his chance to raise the question, but he put his hand down. Moses Munyaka, will you please go ahead with the question? Moses?
Okay, it seems we've got a bit of glitches there. I can see one question from Tassin Raiman. What is the role of the local municipality in the district development model? Ashley, would you like to take that one, please? And who and where are the political champions appointed? If you can just take those two, Ashley.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I see there's another question about the role of tertiary institutions in the DDM as well. So the local government is municipalities, if you talk about institution of government, is a critical player in the IGR structures that we have identified at the local government level. So municipalities participate in those IGR structures, technical committees, by identifying what are the key needs and challenges that they experience in their respective municipalities and districts, and they need to assist in those structures in making sure that whatever is identified in the development of the one plans corresponds and addresses those challenges. So they are a key reference support and player in the development of the one plan through those IGR, the DDM IGR structures. Because they know what's best and they know the environment and what's required in their various municipal and district contexts. So that's in simple terms where they do participate. And they need to make sure in those structures that the matters raised in the integrated development plans, for example, are also factored into the one plan. So the role of tertiary institutions, if I can just stick on the topics of roles and responsibility. Tertiary institutions are critical information and data providers in the development of the one plans. We have seen in one province where the development of the one plans were undertaken through the intergovernmental DDM structures at the local government level and at a provincial level. They've roped in key experts from universities and technical universities, etc., from tertiary institutions, and those colleagues that they roped in from the tertiary institutions were actually resource persons, resource people, to provide information and data in terms of what is the socioeconomic context in the district, what are the needs identified in a district or metro space, etc., etc. So they are key in providing that information and data that underpin the one plans, and where they have been involved. I can honestly say the level of detail of one plans, it's much better than where tertiary institutions, for example, have not been part of and participating. Then the last on the political team.
Sorry, just to cut in there. I think I would suggest that some of the questions that are being raised in the Q&A box, please can you address them as we go along, otherwise we'll have a problem with regards to time. I also encourage the participants to raise the questions in the Q&A box so that the panelists can address them as they come along. I really apologize to stop you there. I know this is an engagement session and there's a lot of questions that would like to be raised, but there's an opportunity to raise them in the Q&A and not in the chat box, so that all the panelists can respond to them. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chair.
Dr. Tola, are you still there?
I think we lost him.
I'm not sure what's going on, but I think we should get on with the program. Could I now invite Dr. Imboweni Mufeye from the DSI to go ahead with his presentation. Dr. Imboweni, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Himra Sudyal, and I think I need to acknowledge, okay, I think Dr. Medusi Chwala is trying to connect as well. I want to thank you, Program Director, and hope that your reconnection goes well. Dr. Sudyal, in acknowledging this opportunity and the role that you're playing in facilitating this, let me also take this opportunity to congratulate you on your selection into the National Academies of Sciences. We're quite proud of your achievements and the role that you're playing and your recognition globally. I think for us as a country, it just shows that our science system in terms of the role that you play is in good hands. I also want to acknowledge Ms. Sophie West, who is from the Innovate UK Knowledge Transfer Network, and the rest of the candidates that we are here, and also the presenter or colleague from the from COGTA, Mr. Ashley Losh. Thank you very much for setting the scene for us and just giving that context of what the the district development model is about. I think it's important that as we look at the role of the district development model, and as Mr. Losh has indicated, it is quite important that we do this with a one government approach, one thing, but secondly, that we look at ensuring coordination. And this event today help us to really just appreciate the approach of the Department of Science and Innovation, of course, working with our stakeholders in trying to make sure that when we talk about service delivery and the impact that we want to have, that people are also able to see that the role of science, technology, and innovation is quite crucial in ensuring that we have the opportunity to address the challenges that we're dealing with as a country, whether it is in terms of service delivery, whether it is in terms of employment creation, but most importantly, how we can actually bring into the fold the whole concept of inclusivity. Now, when the district development model was announced and the thinking thereof was made clear to the population, and I think as we continue to engage more about what it is and what it is going to do, is just going to get well understood with time. It's really just making sure that we know, and I think this was mentioned in the opening remarks, that everything that is done and felt by our communities is actually felt at local government level. Whether it is you driving over a pothole, is going to happen at a particular municipality somewhere. Whether it is you having an experience of having to deal with crime or having to look for employment, all of these things are happening at local level. And it is therefore important that when we want to really look at the development of solutions, we think about them at that level to say, what do we do at a particular locality in making sure that the impact of government, the impact of private sector, the impact of civil society is actually felt. So it is for this reason that even when we developed our white paper as a Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, which is really the blueprint of how innovation is going to play a role in achieving national goals, it was very clear that we needed to look at the whole aspect of decentralized innovation approach, but also looking at the role of local innovators. And I think also dealing with one of the questions that somebody has mentioned, has raised here, what the role of tertiary institution is. We cannot have a successful district development model if we exclude any segment of society, whether it is your higher and your tertiary education institutions, the local community, civil society, all spheres of government, which is why even though there are challenges in coordination, we need to work towards making sure that those challenges are properly addressed in order for this model to be successful. Now, we know that at the highest level, there is always talk about a capable state, and a capable state being that state which is able to execute its mandate successfully in terms of fulfilling every little responsibility that government has to its citizens, just making sure that it is discharged fully, whether you talk about chain security, whether you talk about food security, whether you talk about the improvement of quality of life overall. This is going to happen through the development of necessary capabilities. And we see that innovation is very much central in making sure that any country has a capable state. You cannot do that by leaving out the aspects of innovation. Now, there's always been a debate about the capability of the state. whether you look at it from the transformative point of view or whether you look at it from the developmental point of view. And these two things are actually not mutually exclusive, but actually reinforcing. So we therefore need to be able to say, let's build, making sure that what we're looking developmental, we are also in the process ensuring that there is a lot of transformation that is happening. And this really cannot happen if you don't bring an element of inclusivity. And I'm quite pleased that even as we begin to look at the implementation of the DDM, we are considering, and the piloting is happening in areas that have got a mix. In some instances, we're looking at covering some metros, but also looking at areas that are rural, where you can begin to say, if we are successful in bringing solutions through the DDM in a typical rural area, then that same approach can somehow find a way of multiplying itself in similar setups. So we therefore are quite, as a Department of Science Innovation, excited about the DDM. We are working to make sure that even our own activities in various localities, either we're looking at local innovation opportunities, that these are coordinated and that we begin to look at impact. And as Ashley has presented, when you look at a number of projects and the magnitude of financing that is going into those projects, if we are coordinating them properly, the impact is going to be massive. And I think that's where we are going to begin to move into ensuring that as a country, we bring about the impact that we want to bring. And I think one of the exciting things is about beginning to appreciate that we need to plan beyond the 5 years that sometimes we have been accustomed to, because we say after 5 years, there's going to be elections. However, at local level, people want to continue with their lives seamlessly in terms of making sure that they've got access to services, they've got access to employment, they've got quality of life, they don't have to navigate all sorts of challenges around potholes, food insecurity, and so on and so forth. So we don't have to, if we implement this properly, to expose people to all the other transitions that we might have politically and otherwise. So it is really therefore my utmost excitement as we begin to move into the direction of implementing the district development model, bringing on board the science and technology and innovation aspect of it. We're quite excited that this will really begin to bring us much closer to our communities, but also creating opportunities for young people. I just come out of the, for example, the mining in Indaba this week, which was in Cape Town. And one of the things that we need to look at when we talk about the district development model is bringing on the aspect of the involvement of young people. And the African continent cannot afford to do anything without including young people, because they are actually the majority of the population. And this is really why when we talk about coming in with the new and leaving the old, that there is always that aspect of saying, how do we make sure that in terms of greening, in terms of cleaning our environment, that part of inclusivity also is about the just transition. How do we make sure that these concepts, as we talk about them, sometimes at very high level and sometimes only at national and provincial level, that we are able to engage our communities at local level for them to know that this is what we are up to. Because we cannot have just transition and we cannot have the greening of our economies unless those concepts are actually understood and appreciated at local government level. And so the district development model needs to, amongst other things, bring a whole host of newer approach into doing things, making sure that we talk about sustainability. When we are now dealing with the challenges of the flooding in KwaZulu-Natal, and we probably are going to be dealing with the same in other areas with time, and hopefully we don't have to deal with it, but the reality is that there is evidence that more and more we are beginning to deal with a number of natural disasters, whether it's droughts, whether it is flooding, and the more we begin to have that state of preparedness and deploying innovations at local government level, use the district development model to begin to raise questions about the impact of climate change and how we can deal with it, we probably aren't going to win this battle. So I do look forward, and from my colleagues in the department, that more and more of the initiatives that we are going to bring on board, they are the ones that are going to really usher a completely new dispensation on how the world is going to look like going forward, and how we actually need to bring up societies that are actually resilient and that will be able to easily adapt in various ways, including how we do our farming, including how we live our daily life, including how we use our resources, beginning to appreciate the whole concept, for example, of circular economy. So those are some of the things that, as we begin to continue to talk, Professor Himmler, that we need to make sure that we don't look at bringing solutions that are outdated, that don't really address the challenges going forward. And most importantly is, how do we ensure that as we learn more, some of these lessons that we have picked up as we implement, we can actually also export and share with the rest of our fellow African countries, so that we can ask about even the Africa Free Trade zones, that these are the zones that are probably going to have unified standards about how we implement some of the initiatives to bring about an end to poor service delivery in our continent. So I thank you so much, and I look forward to the engagements throughout the whole day, and the ideas that we have, colleagues will really pick them up and see how we can become better at implementing our initiatives. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Mboneni, for that timely presentation. We really appreciate it, and you've actually enabled us to somehow catch up on our timing of the agenda. Thank you just for giving that perspective from the science, technology, and innovation ecosystem, particularly highlighting how universities now need to operate closer to society within the DDM framework. So just emphasizing that through the DDM framework, even universities should be contributing and working closer to society. And this is important, as you highlighted, that the extent of a capable state largely depends on its rate of innovation, which then drives entrepreneurship. Especially, with our high rate of unemployment, this is something that we cannot, overlook. I would like to welcome questions. Colleagues who are running the session, I cannot see any hands that are raised. Renate, if you can assist me, if there's any hands that are raised on your side, just to indicate who that is and the order that we can take them. Also, the Q&A is currently, very vibrant. I can see some of the questions that are coming through. For example, one from Tebu Homunareng, who asks, where does the DDM implementation start? Is it driven by municipalities' service delivery needs, or entities, identifying where and when they can contribute. I think that is largely linked to the first presentation. Tato Sihuel, I see your hand is up. After that, it is Unati Munyai. If you can start with Tato, please unmute yourself and raise your question. Thank you.
Greetings to the panelists and greetings to the speaker, all protocol observed, the members, and also the respective and distinguished guests. With regards to the innovative and the promulgation of scientific knowledge in sound decision making, at the length and breadth of South Africa has yet to see its innovation come to existence from the point of departure when the infrastructure is now put in place of motion for planning, leading, and evolving. Then when do we realize the innovative implementation side of the infrastructure that is supposed to carry South Africa and represent innovative transformational solutions with young people being present and also carrying out scientific and engineering implementations and applications that is building, investing, and growing the nation from where it was to where it needs to be. And then on the second point is that in order to address the leg limitation and scarcity of promulgating innovative solutions and transformational ideas, we have to look at the point of departure on what is the current strength that we have as a collaborative effort to build and maintain the sustainable innovative infrastructures that is supposed to be a representation of our sound scientific thinking and also display a cohesion between universities, within government, private sector, and also civil society in promulgating the innovative thinking and also building the nation further. And then the third point is to look at the...
Tato?
Yes?
Sorry, if I can just maybe stop you there so that we give Dr. Mboneni a chance, but also as well as others, you know. Dr. Mboneni, if you'd like to give responding remarks to what is raised by Tato there, and from what I see on my side, from his picture there, this is a young person who's raising questions around you know, innovation aspects in this regard. Dr. Mboneni, over to you.
Thanks very much. I think there's a question that I think we'll probably go to COGTA, but the issue around the involvement of young people in innovation, that's really when we talk about innovative projects, and there's a number of those that are going to be part of the catalytic projects going into this DDM. It's us beginning to create spaces. We've got initiatives such as your what we call the living labs, where we want to create spaces for young people to come in and say, this is where I stay, and these are the challenges that we have, but I've got solutions. You got to think about them, and then if you need support or to be given technically or otherwise, then we find a way of how do we really create that support for you. So that when we talk about even creating marketplaces at that local level, you know, the whole concept of trying, for example, to get that the money circulate in a particular area for a period of time, unless we have local innovations, that can't happen. Because if the innovation is happening 400 kilometers away, that means that you have to make sure that whatever you want to buy is going to be bought from that particular direction. So that's why I think when later my colleagues, I think Ephraim and Tsepang presents, there might be a sense of what is it that could be expected for young people to participate in going forward. So what I would do is, because I'm just going to have a 30 minutes break to have a meeting, an urgent meeting now, I will rejoin, and some of the questions I will probably also be able to address during the incoming Q&As.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Mbonin, for responding to that. And I see in the Q&A there, Mr. Lochi is addressing some of the questions. So please, attendees, don't be hesitant to raise your questions in the Q&A. The panelists that are there are actually responding to them. And Dr. Mbonin, thanks a lot. And we are aware that you now have to move on to your next meeting. We highly appreciate your attendance today. We know that at such a strategic level, there's quite a lot of issues that you need to attend to, but we really appreciate that you could be with us today, and all the best with the rest of the day. And when you join later, hopefully you'll be able to take some of the questions that would have actually arisen. We're going to move to the next item in our agenda now. This will be a presentation from Ms. Sophie West, whom I can already see. She's a manager for knowledge transfer within the knowledge transfer network, and she joins us today to give an international perspective, being based in the UK. Ms. Sophie, you're welcome, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak this morning. I'm just going to share a few slides with the panel, if that's okay. So yeah, firstly, very good morning and very nice to meet everyone. I'm Sophie West. I'm the Africa Regional Lead for Innovate UK KTN, and I've been asked to really think about how innovation can be used to create innovation districts, really thinking about some of the international lessons that we can bring in from our experiences in Innovate UK. So firstly, a little about us. You may have heard us as KTN. We're now also Innovate UK KTN. We exist as the networking partner of the UK's Innovation Agency, who has a close strategic partnership with the DSI to connect innovators with new partners and new opportunities beyond current existing thinking, and to accelerate ambitious ideas into real-world solutions. Our purpose and vision as Innovate UK KTN is to drive diverse connections to create positive change. And also a line that we like to say is that we look to establish a network of innovators so powerful its ideas will change the world. Maybe just a very quick overview of some of the stats about Innovate UK KTN. We have approximately 46,000 unique organisations within our network, predominantly focused around small and medium enterprises, with about 72% of small organisations. Within that network, we've got about 230,000 innovators, and we have a presence in every university within the UK, predominantly through the likes of the knowledge transfer partnerships, which I believe a number of you may be well aware of. In terms of what we believe our key outputs are, which are verified externally, 66% of our network introduced by KTN go on to collaborate together. We say that actually 42% of our collaborations reach outcomes faster by 1 to 2 years. 60% increased investment in R&D and results in KTN engagements in the UK and internationally, and we equate that to approximately £100 million worth of increased investment in R&D in the UK economy. We, as the KTN as well, we have a global team and a global presence, which I'll go on to talk about in a little bit later, through the Global Alliance Africa programme, for which I am one of the regional leads. So I thought first what I would do is maybe just talk through some of our examples in the UK, whereas Innovate UK, we've been working on innovation districts. Then I'll talk through some of the initiatives that we've been involved with internationally. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the Global Alliance Africa project and how we've almost built some of these learnings into the initiatives. So the first one I want to briefly talk through this morning is the Smart Specialisation Hub. And so this came out of recommendations at the government level through the likes of Sir Andrew Whitty and the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills, as it was then called, really think about how we establish in the UK an authority advisory capacity to support the local economic partners, and how also, I guess, thinking about previous comments, how we're also generating that evidence about the importance of place and the importance of district innovation models in the UK. So the smart specialisation methodology, just in case anyone is unaware, it's very much a term that's coined by the European Commission, but it's thinking very much about a bottom-up process, drawing on inputs from business, higher education, government and civil society to develop collaborative strategies to maximise the potential and innovation strengths of a local area, and using smart specialisation principles to ensure local area prioritises sectors which they have or can develop to promote a competitive advantage of the area. So the Smart Specialisation Hub, for which Innovate UK KTM was involved, was essentially the UK's innovation observatory and advisory between 2016 and 2019. And I'm sure you can imagine through that time, the Specialisation Hub featured a number of pull and push factors in terms of our innovation spheres in the UK, which had quite a significant impact on its successes and delivery. Needless to say, the word Brexit comes into that factor as well. It was funded by government and agencies and enabled a suite of analysis to support local actors as they sort of really make informed and impactful investment decisions about creating innovation districts in the UK. Originally, as mentioned before, it's very much a term coined by the European Commission, and it was to support applications for the ERDF, so the European Regional Development Fund, and its remit then expanded to deliver more of a broader agenda in terms of innovation and understanding of the support required. It was very much a body that provided impartial evidence and trusted evidence to really support innovation activities and strengths and capabilities across several sectors in industry. We undertook research, advised national policy drivers. As mentioned, we faced a number of policy implications during the time and worked very closely with government and partners, constantly providing that trusted analysis and data on the stats. So the hub had 6 core key objectives. So to improve the visibility and use of data sets nationally and locally, identify where the gaps and weaknesses are with local data and analysis, really promote through that data use of evidence-based decision-making, understanding and the actual application of smart specialisation principles. It was a huge tool in terms of being able to map and understand the UK's innovation system. And as mentioned previously as well, it supported with some of the applications to the ERDF as well. So in terms of what the Smart Specialisation Hub with their scope, we worked with all 38 of the local enterprise partnerships in the UK, conducting science innovation audits across 2 waves over the period, in which through the audits we convened the key players, advised on where the strategic fits were, and set steering groups and sharing data, again supported by local government as well as the national government as well. A lot of the work and a lot of the evidence that we found through supporting the 38 LEPs then built into the industrial strategy that was then created by the UK government. And it really moved, in my opinion, and kind of knowing about our work as a Smart Specialisation Hub, it really put innovation at the forefront of informed policy decisions across the UK. What I thought I'd do is there's a detailed report that I can share with you afterwards, but as Innovate UK KTM, we provided a report to the UK government, really thinking about what some of the recommendations could be as a result of our learnings from the Smart Specialisation Hub for future models going forward. And actually thinking about some of the questions that have already been raised, this very much aligns with the previous speaker and some of the considerations that need to be made. So firstly, one of our recommendations was that governments need to ensure that local economic partners or development districts have the analytical resources to really draw down on the strategy for sustainability beyond the local innovation strategies, and also make sure it's really consistent, but also evolving with the local economic picture at the time, and that it really reflects the current moment as well. There needs to be comprehensive support offered to development districts, innovation districts, but also that incorporates a really comprehensive evaluation of the impact and the outcomes supported through these initiatives. It's really important, we felt, that actually there needs to be communities of practice formed around a shared challenge, and actually we really need to facilitate those platforms to have these communities of practice. And then really thinking about actually how, as the government, how as the individual actors as well, can changes be made to support the landscape, to offer the opportunities to demonstrate that actually government as well as local actors, their initiatives, their objectives are actually better aligned and can align much more closely than sometimes the perception may be. And then in terms of the final two recommendations, actually a national observatory of local data is really important, and we saw that through the Smart Specialisation Hub, but actually that's something that's often quite missing at a national level, and that actually if we're really going to harness the true power and true potential of innovation, particularly for economic growth, an observatory is really a key player in this. And I guess final, as we all hear, the simplification of the funding landscape is so beneficial, allowing potentially more of a holistic funding pots so that actually local areas or innovation districts can really tailor the spending to their actual needs. I think I want to close this section on the Smart Specialisation Hub. We're really thinking about, when we use the terminology place-based innovation or smart specialisation, we really think about how that promotes world-leading strengths. But in my mind in particular, and from my experience with the Smart Specialisation Hub and our current initiatives as well, not all places can be world leading, and it's very important that we recognise that. But actually through the likes of the Smart Specialisation methodology or place-based methodology, I feel there's a really real importance of, okay, let's reprioritise what we mean by world leading, and that instead actually what we need to be able to do through these methodologies, and it's the power of these methodologies in my mind, is that actually we catalyse innovation on a different scale, and actually we look at impacts on a different scale, but that impact at a local level and at a district level can be equally as powerful as what we're implying by the world leading strengths. And I think that's been one of the huge take-home points for us as Innovate UK KTN from the Smart Specialisation Hub. The second case study in the UK that I want to talk about, which a number of our team as Innovate UK have been part of, is the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Local Industrial Strategy. As you may be aware, that as an area in the UK houses some of the best universities in the world, notably Cambridge University. And that actually as an area in the UK, again, some may have heard it as the Golden Triangle in the UK, was at the time already contributing about 22 billion a year to the UK economy. But in recent years, in 2019, a new economic blueprint for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough was designed to almost further maximise the productivity and innovation of the area. It's very much the breadbasket of the UK in terms of our agricultural production as well. And so they really wanted to maximise the food, life sciences, food production, AI, strengths and advanced manufacturing sectors. So this was developed and supported by a number of our KTN staff in the UK, really thinking about how we can further maximise the full potential of the region, really promote as well skills and apprenticeships hubs, as was mentioned by one of the previous panelists and questions, how we promote youth job creation through innovation district models as well. So now through the likes of the industrial strategy, the local industrial strategy, it has further enhanced its global reputation for innovation and enterprise, focusing on some of the world leading life sciences, and which has delivered highly skilled jobs, securing the local economy for years to come. And again, that's all through the models of developing and promoting the likes of innovation action plans. So there are two examples from the UK. What I then wanted to do was talk about some of our international examples that we've supported as Innovate UK, KTN. One of our key programs that we have internationally is an initiative called Global Expert Missions that have been running for about the last 10 years. These are funded by the UK government and Innovate UK and delivered by ourselves as Innovate UK KTN. And they're really about driving the sharing of expertise across borders and fostering global collaboration. They help build international strategic partnerships and provide insights into innovation opportunities for the UK, but also globally as well. They predominantly focus on some of the UK strategic sectors, but cover a global reach in terms of focal countries. So the first one I'd like to talk about is a global expert mission that we had in terms of Canada's superclusters, which I'm sure many of you are well aware of. So in 2017, the Canadian government committed to invest up to 950 million Canadian dollars over 5 years to launch innovation superclusters. They, at the time, invited industry-led consortia to lead and invest in bold and ambitious supercluster proposals to essentially supercharge, and that's a term that you see a lot in the Canadian context, the regional innovation ecosystems. One of the superclusters that the Canadian government looked to focus on was advanced manufacturing. And actually they invited Innovate UK to really share some of the lessons of the UK's advanced manufacturing innovation clusters. So in 2019, we led a global expert mission with 9 organisations from the UK, including the likes of Rolls-Royce and the National Composite Centre, really to promote a shared learning with the advanced manufacturing supercluster on how the models in the UK, how we can share some of the examples and lessons from some of our biggest industries and sectors in the UK and promote these hubs. As a result of the significant investment from the Canadian government and the likes of the global expert missions and connections internationally, worldwide, the Made in Canada innovation brand now is being recognised as excellence in innovative manufacturing. And I think there's some incredible statistics, particularly the advanced manufacturing supercluster, that in terms of GDP impact over 10 years, it's 13.5 billion is that they're expecting their impact, and looking to create more than 13,000 jobs within the supercluster. So I think that's an incredible example of how actually focusing at a district level on an innovation district could really maximise potential, both social and economic, for a country. And then the final example that I just want to share from one of our international support is Israel's cyber capital, Be'er-Sheva. So Israel, I guess, through a combination of its defence, the defence risk, but also the technological prowess of a country, has turned cybersecurity into one of its most important exports. In 2013 alone, IBM, Cisco, GE all made large acquisitions or investments in Israeli cybersecurity companies. 2013 marked a really new chapter in the history of Israel's cybersecurity sector, where Benjamin Netanyahu led the inaugural of the Advanced Technology Park in Be'er-Sheva, and that really through a number of key strategic partners, including the National Cybersecurity Agency and the likes of the Ministry of Defence, or Ministry of Security, sorry, moving into the area, really promoted this cyber capital in Israel. And in 2014, the Israeli government passed a resolution designating the city as Israel's cyber capital. Obviously, there's a lot of political and intelligence sensitivities around the topic, but in 2018, we as Innovate UK hosted a cybersecurity global expert mission, again, really to look at how we can foster and promote UK-Israeli, but as well as international cybersecurity connections and shared lessons. And I think it's fair to say, as I'm sure many of us know, Be'er-Sheva now is commonly regarded as the second best innovation hub after California in terms of cybersecurity. So we also wanted to almost highlight that as one of our leading examples that we've been involved with as KTN in the UK. So as I mentioned before, I'm part of the global team at Innovate UK KTN, and we really like to connect regionally, nationally and globally. And one of our key programs is the Global Alliance program that really looks to drive international collaborations, but also learning from our experiences in the UK. And one of our driving programs is Global Alliance Africa, which is a 6-year initiative funded by the UK government's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, but also the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, again with the DSI and TIA as key strategic partners for the project. One of the initiatives, so the programme more generally, is looking at how we can work in true partnership to strengthen innovation ecosystems in Kenya, Nigeria and South Africa through trilateral learning or quadrilateral learning. One of our initiatives that we've introduced, again, thinking about the importance of innovation in innovation districts, but also promoting innovation in the likes of secondary cities, is place-based innovation. So place-based innovation as an intervention really looks at that networking mechanism to unlock the potential of local innovation ecosystems. We draw on the principles of participatory frameworks, so really placemaking, design thinking, action research. And in our desired impact is really to achieve stronger local, national and international networks, improved access to new market opportunities and technology development and commercialization. So the last year has been a pilot year for our place-based innovation initiative. We're currently working in Ekiti State in Nigeria, which is one of the lesser known states outside of Lagos, Abuja, but is really looking to be a beacon of innovation in Nigeria. We're working with Eldoret in Kenya, again, Eldoret really being the breadbasket of Kenya and really promoting innovation. And then Gauteng province in South Africa. So 3 very different contexts for the pilot, and looking at actually how as a model we can take learnings going forward. So what we've done over the past year through our learnings from the likes of the Smart Specialisation Hub and the Peterborough, Cambridgeshire Local Industrial Strategy is we conducted regional innovation audits in Ekiti, Eldoret and Gauteng, really looking at where the key sectors are and where the innovation priorities and opportunities are in the areas. We conducted extensive stakeholder consultations as well, and through that, in true partnership and in a participatory manner, developed innovation action plans for the 3 areas. At the end of last year, we launched the innovation action plans. I'll come on just to talk a little bit in the next slide about the innovation action plans. We've recently formed local advisory groups who will take a sector focus as subgroups, really to support the delivery of the innovation action plans. And at the moment, we're promoting and establishing a local innovation network and launching the innovation network in the 3 areas. So for example, this is an example of the Gauteng Innovation Action Plan. So all of the innovation plans, we developed this shared vision, what the key objectives are and what the outcomes we're looking to collectively promote. And within the action plan, we have developed in partnership 8 to 10 innovation action points that would look to deliver over the next few years. I think it's really important to state as well that as Innovate UK, given that we have a very neutral position, both within the UK but internationally, and we hope we're very much that trusted international partner, we very much are looking here not to be reinventing the wheel, not to be siloing, very aware of so much else that's going on, particularly in Gauteng through other donors and initiatives, but actually how we can almost act as that network function as well to maybe tie in what some of the other donors are doing, for example, or what some of the initiatives are, so that actually where the sum is greater than the parts through what we're hoping to promote here with the innovation action plans. So thank you very much for your time. I'm aware that hopefully I've helped catch up a little bit I put my email in the chat. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay for the Q&A session, but if you have any questions at all, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks a lot, Sophie, and also just assisting us to catch up on our time there. We highly appreciate that. You know, the global case studies of KTN's involvement that you highlighted with regards to local industrial strategies, you know, they are quite nice, especially the focus that you alluded to on SMMEs, because that is the similar approach, you know, adopted in South Africa to stimulate economic growth, entrepreneurship, and innovation at in small businesses. So it is quite nice to see, you know, that kind of approach being, you know, an approach adopted elsewhere as well. And also the fact that you gave us quite a lot of details around those case studies, you know, we highly appreciate that. Quickly, just to take the questions whilst you're still online, I see there's a hand from Leonard Lamula. That's the only one I can see on my side, but also if you can lately, I mean, afterwards, just address some in the Q&A box, we'll highly appreciate that. Yes. Leonard Lamula, over to you for your question. Thank you.
The question that I wanted to ask, that it's covered. I apologize for oversight of my hand being raised.
Not a problem, not a problem. Thanks, you know, thanks a lot. There's one question from Vienna Lisco that I see in the Q&A. You indicated economic benefit to the UK. Is there any economic data which demonstrates the benefit to those countries?
Yeah, so as Innovate UK KTM, particularly through the Global Expert Missions, we produce a number of Global Expert Mission reports that I'll share the link in the chat to as well. So these reports also look at like for example, in 2018, if a mission was held, we like to also track what the economic benefit has been over the years as well. So I can share a link to those reports that contain some of the information. I think as well, when you if you look at the likes of the Canada super clusters as well, I'll share the link to their website. They've got some fantastic data on the benefits as well to the likes of Canada of using such innovation district models. So I'll share the links to those in the chat for everyone to view.
Thanks a lot. Just to the last one before we let you go, with respect to the Canada case study, there's a question from Mario Marais. If you can estimate the investment per job created in that case study, if you've got that information, can you please provide? Thanks.
Yeah, unfortunately on a Friday morning, my maths skills are not great enough whatsoever to make that calculation, but again, I'll take that away. And we can see I think it's a really interesting question actually. When you look at these figures, they're incredible sums of investments that's going in, but actually when we break it down to job creation level, so Mario, I think it's a really, really valid question, and again we'll take that away and do some maths work on a Friday morning as to what actually the investment per job is there.
Thanks a lot, Sophie, for addressing those two. I do not see any hands raised now. So, in that light, Sophie, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. It was really, really, encouraging to see the data that you provided, highlighting all those, case studies. Maybe before I close, I see now that there's a hand raised from Joyce. If you can just take that last one before you go. Please, Joyce, can you make it quick? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Sophie, do learners play any role in your project? Learners at school or even students?
Not necessarily directly, given I guess the focus at the moment as Innovate UK really working at the business and SME level. But in terms of the Global Alliance Africa project, one of our focus, and I guess as Innovate UK, it's fair to say that we have a huge program focused on young innovators. Again, I can share the link. This, I guess, maybe the possibly older end of the learners, but 17 to 18 to 30 category. And actually, there's been some huge initiatives supported by the UK government with young innovators. And I'm aware that actually there was a programme last year piloted by Innovate with TIA and DSI as well to support UK South Africa young innovation support. So I guess indirectly, in terms of thinking about the place-based and the innovation districts, but more generally, yes, there's a huge focus on young innovators for Innovate UK. Again, I'll share the links in the chat.
No, thank you, Sophie. That would have been our last round of questions directed at Sophie. Sophie, thanks a lot. I know now we all that would like to get a stretch, but before we go on our break, I'd like to welcome Precious Lukele. Precious, who's going to take us just briefly on the survey that you have all received when you joined and also got in the invite. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe just quickly as a way of background in a sentence, we are in the process of developing a research paper on using the DDM as a platform to drive innovation for inclusivity. It's a qualitative paper. We are interested in your perspectives and understanding of the DDM and innovation for inclusivity as concepts, as well as sort of the accompanying funding and governance arrangements for that. We have packaged these questions into a survey. The link, like the doctor was saying right now, the link has been shared with yourselves in the invitation for this event. But I've also just pasted the link just now before the links for Sophie. I'll paste it again to the survey. Would like to appreciate the responses that we have gotten thus far. For those that have filled the survey, if you have not gotten the time to do so, please, we really urge you to please fill the survey during the break. The estimated time of completion is about 7 to 10 minutes. So it's a very short survey. It's also quite easy. It has click and rate options. You'll be done in a moment. So we really encourage everyone to please complete the survey. Your participation is quite key to the development of this paper. The final research paper itself will be published on a public platform in due time, and you will be made aware when this happens. Thank you in advance. Thank you, Chair. That's it from my side.
Thanks a lot, Precious, for making it brief. Ladies and gentlemen, we've gotten to our tea break time. I would like us to come back at exactly 11 o'clock just so that we can catch up. Please, if we can reassemble at 11 o'clock, let's get some blood flowing. Let's also replenish our liquids, and we'll rejoin at 11 o'clock, please. Thank you.
You can ask me a quick question.
Yesterday in the
Welcome back all. As we just a few seconds away from 11 o'clock, I'd like to thank you for rejoining the session. I see that attendance numbers haven't dropped significantly, so I really appreciate you reconnecting back to to the session. And I'd now like to hand over. Thank you. I'd now like to hand over to two DSI colleagues, Mr. Tsepang Musia, as well as Mr. Ephraim Palafala, who will then take us through some of the details with regards to the Department of Science and Innovation's approach to the DDM model. And I assume you are the first one to present, Tsepang, so over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon again, colleagues. I will try and just scan through so that we just catch up with time. So, Chair, I think, just see if I can roll my slides here. Yeah, right. So, Chair, I was really encouraged about the comments by Sophie and how districts play a very unique role in the UK around innovation, and they have certain focus areas around innovation. But I want to share how we are approaching innovation as a department. How are we approaching the district development model, given our mandate of enabling innovation in the national system of innovation across the country. So what is really a key, maybe something COGTA will have to take cognizance of, is that we do need to engage philosophically about the concept, about the model itself, let alone the project, but the model itself. Can it evolve? What does it become in future? How do we shape it? How do we share lessons? And how are we experiencing the model as various sector departments? And what are the next iterations? How can we make it more impactful and responsive, especially to the challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality? Hence, we bringing to the discussion this notion of inclusivity. How do we really, in the DDM, have a bigger focus on inclusivity so that we are able to deal with the unemployment? If you were to do an analysis maybe of a single plan, one plan, would we know what is the split of initiatives from a percentage point of view, those that are really about driving employment, so that we are not surprised? How do we know in future that the collection, the combination of a project in a particular district municipality addresses unemployment? You may find that there is a skew in terms of distribution. Maybe you've got more 80% infrastructure project, which is required, and maybe 10% on projects that are responsive to unemployment. So how do we know that impact right up front? Hence, we have engaged CSIR to share an impact simulation, a model that they are working on to find a way to understand impacts that each one plan could make to deal with the unemployment. Maybe there is even a case as well, Chair, for a pillar on the DDM that just focuses on unemployment. We don't have that pillar, but how do we really bring the model to drive these challenges around unemployment? I'm trying to roll my slides, but I'm struggling a bit. Just 1 second. Right. Okay. So I'll share how we are approaching it as a department. I've got colleagues from the department here who may take some of the questions. We are deepening our thinking. We've been asking and critiquing the model, but trying to find an appropriate response to the district development model. So I'll speak about principles that we've adopted and how we have internalized the model and interpreted it as a department. I will also highlight 3 processes that we are using to engage with the district. There's process 1 of existing projects. I'll explain briefly about that, and process 2, where we've international partnership and international innovation funding that we have brought together to help municipalities. We call that program the viability and validation of innovation for service delivery. And then process 3 is exactly what we are asking everyone in the room here to engage with us about. How can we work together and bring innovation players, be it innovation intermediaries, higher education institutions, innovation hubs, SMMEs that are driving innovative solutions in district? How can we bring such an ecosystem around the district development model to address inclusivity and to address the problem of unemployment? So I'll cover those 4 areas. And I will also demonstrate the composition of our portfolio of innovations that we have selected to support some district municipalities. You will also know that the Department of Science and Innovation is not a national department, so we don't have presence in terms of provincial offices or district offices. We are still trying to configure an appropriate institutional arrangement for the department to engage effectively with each municipality around innovation. So you may find that you are not able to attend all of the meetings, but we've got work in progress to design an appropriate institutional arrangement for that. Now, as a department, we believe very firmly there's a case for innovation in municipalities, and the DDM provides an opportunity, a very ideal opportunity for entrepreneurship and innovative district. In Durban, if it's about the hub and the logistics around the hub, then how do we build that as an area of focus? There are municipalities where you may find there is existing capability around manufacturing. So how do we focus and use innovation for manufacturing, or for tourism, innovation for agriculture, and build these innovative districts and drive that as a theme? We firmly believe the Decadal Plan, which is the DSI's blueprint that sets priorities for innovation for the country in the next 10 years. We firmly believe it can also be implemented through the district development model as a platform. Procurement of locally developed technologies could be an area that is coming from the Decadal Plan. How do we drive that in the DDM? How do we drive new sources of growth, be it 4IR related or circular economy related, but how do we bring it to life through the district development model? In our understanding, I'm not going to repeat what was said, geo-referenced budget, but what is key for us as DSI is that we will see the success of the DDM if innovation has been used in the district development model to really address challenges that are facing communities. If it's potholes, it's service delivery, it's crime, it's drugs, it's climate change, it's floods, whatever the case is, we believe that will be a very important measure of success for the district development model. We also have adopted a view that the DDM itself should ensure innovation for local economic development. So if we were to do an assessment of 1 plans, how much of initiatives in those 1 plans are really addressing local economic development in these various districts? There are well-known principles. I think the colleague from COGTA, Mr. Ashley Lodge, did explain some of these underpinning principles of the model. You know, IGR, you know, synergies, you know all of that. But what we really have realized is that if we have to know the total impact of all interventions, the quantum impact of all interventions, and be able to determine those upfront, that's a very important principle for us in approaching the DDM, because we have had projects as sector departments in the past. So projects are not new because now we've got the DDM. In the past 25 years, we've had projects, but in those projects, we have not really been able to make a case or even to reduce unemployment, poverty, and inequality. It's going to be the same situation. We will have project package as a DDM like we did with projects that are being packaged as in IDPs. But how do you know that this is the right combination? If I've got project X and Y, I can create so much employment. How do we assimilate that? How do we model that right up front? Right. So our department, we seem to be focusing more on economic positioning and also integrated basic service delivery. You will see in the presentation around the portfolio, the type of projects that we have. But we feel there should be a bigger emphasis on job creation projects, on investment project, on economic project, and on LED project in rural and urban settings, and also improving service delivery projects. If we've got the right combination around those, the other projects will always support, like infrastructure. We do need infrastructure. But if we've got less projects responding to economic situation and unemployment, then we may really have a very limited contribution through the DTM in the next 10 years. And it will be only after 10 years that we realize, yeah, we had projects, we reported on project sector departments, allocated prioritized investments, and coordinated and synergized and linked those projects across each other, and worked with municipalities. But the dent on unemployment still remains. So how do we foresee and make sure that the portfolios of these one plans are responsive? Other principles we've adopted as a department, it's not about listing of projects. We realize it's not about saying, here is a list of projects we have in Mangaung or in eThekwini or in Zululand, but it's about selecting the right project, the most responsive project, the most impactful projects to the challenges. And it's about packaging those projects through a geographic concentration approach. And it is also about a bottom-up approach where we should be saying, what is it that municipalities require from sector departments, rather than sector departments saying, this is what we are bringing as project for you, but how can we be in a situation through the DDM platform where a bottom-up approach and co-creation is driven. Data analytics tools, I think Sophie was making a point that we really need to have national observatory of innovation data. How do we assess innovation in district municipalities and in the DDM itself? Some of the principles, I'm not going to go through all of them here, is that we need to be approaching this in a systems thinking approach, and also understanding what is the quantum impact this project will really deliver. So those are the principles that we have adopted. Like I said, we have a three-pronged strategy. So the first process of our strategy was to identify existing projects that are responsive. So it's not every project, because all projects in any way are within a space, and the space is a geographic space. A geographic space can be broken down to a district, a metro, a locality. So whatever is happening on a geographic space, so all projects technically are in a municipality. It's just that the focus maybe is somewhere else. So our first process was to say, what are the existing projects and how do we select them? What is the selection criteria and what sort of impact we want to see? Process one. And process two is about engaging through a bottom-up process where we ask municipalities to express interest to participate on a program where we have got a partnership with European Union, and we've got some funding from the EU to raise investments for innovation to support district municipalities. And that's process two. And then process three is the discussion we are having with you here today. So on process one, we felt high impact projects will be those that really are helping us achieve SDG goals, those that are really helping us achieve MTSF outcomes of government, because we are government, there are clear intentions from the ruling party. And then those that are aligned with the one plan pillar, and those that are really addressing our decadal plan and strategic outcomes as a department. However, we felt in that approach, it is fine to say here is 100 most responsive project because strategically they are responsive. But then we were asking ourselves, they are responsive to our strategic objectives as a department, to our policy intentions as a department, but are they responsive to the challenges on the ground? We then set up a DDM selection criteria. We had to test them through that particular criteria and take them through. The criteria for selecting this project was about projects that are really about employment for unemployed youth, entrepreneurship, employability, active citizenry, a project that are responding to societal challenges, drugs, health, drought, climate change, and other vulnerabilities, a project that are really supporting or helping municipalities to adopt alternative methods on service delivery, on water, on sanitation, and project that help with a green innovative infrastructure, as well as beneficiaries are women, youth, and people with disability. So that was our criteria when we went about formulating the portfolio. So we then defined 4 impact areas at any given point in a municipality with a collection of projects from the DSI portfolio. These are the impact results we will want to see. Life-changing opportunities, we are putting a group of projects around life-changing opportunities for the youth and the population. And then also projects around economic competitiveness, circular economy, etc., tourism, agriculture, mining. We are grouping those ones, and then access to basic service delivery and infrastructure. So there's a grouping. So at any given municipality, we would like to drive a collection of projects in these 4 areas explained in this quadrant. I will quickly, Chair, because of time, I don't want to drag this forever. I will just give you a very short sense of the composition of our projects through our DDM viewer. Portia, you will run this for about 5 minutes, and then I'll come back and maybe share on process 2 and then close the presentation. Over to you, Portia. Can you just set up your viewer quickly, 5 minutes or less?
Okay, thank you, Tepang, and good morning, colleagues. My name is Portia Mnigati, working at the DSI as a GIS technician. Today, I will be taking you through the composition of the DDM portfolio. Can you please stop sharing, Tepang, so that I can share my screen? Okay. Okay, can you see my screen then?
Yes, we can, Tepang.
Oh, okay, so as you can see, there are a total of 126 DDM projects, and from the map, we can visually see the districts where a lot of these projects are being initiated. Currently, we have the highest number of DDM projects being implemented in the following provinces: KZN with 39 projects, Eastern Cape with 20, as well as Gauteng with 14 projects. Of these projects that are mentioned above, 54 of them are addressing the impact area for economic competitiveness and recovery. 42 of them are addressing life-changing opportunities, and 23 of them are addressing access to basic services and infrastructure. On this graph, we can see that 72 of these projects are addressing economic positioning, the one plan pillar of economic positioning, and 40 of them are addressing integrated service provisioning. Below, we can see the most addressed SDG goals, and 17 of the projects are addressing goal 2, which is to end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. 15 of these projects are addressing Goal 5, which is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Then 13 of these are addressing Goal 17, which is to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. So from this graph, the least addressed SDG goal is Goal 10, which is reduce inequality among countries. And on these maps on the side, we show they're showing the province with the most highest investment. So you can see the darker shades represents provinces that spend the most, and the lighter shades, that's where there's not a lot of money being invested there. So you can see in Gauteng that there has been a sum of a project cost of 834,546,634.88 cents. And the second highest province investing is Limpopo with 194,699,507. And the province where most of these projects are being implemented will be spending money, which is 127,181,075. So basically, this is a summary of all the things that, or impacts or factors that Tepang was addressing before my presentation. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Portia. So you can allow me to share and I can finish the presentation. Right, so Chair, I'm not sure if you can see my screen. Yeah. So we just gave you a sense of how our portfolio is structured and also how we got to the portfolio. And we are making a case that it is not about listing projects, but maybe selecting them very carefully. Some examples of projects which we feel we should be driving with municipalities to ensure inclusivity, to ensure that we address unemployment and create a participation of the unemployed youth into the economies around what you call broadband networks. These are cooperative networks where we can easily create income opportunities for cooperatives, for the unemployed youth in rural areas to set up their own stable networks. Around drones as well, value chain for drones. This is a very, what you call, growing industry worldwide. And even in the South African context, in China and US, the rate is very, very high. The licenses we have in South Africa through civil aviation for drones is very less compared to what's happening in the US. But throughout the value chain of drones industry, be it components, manufacturing, sub-components, the applications, and system integration, there is immense opportunities for employment creation and inclusivity to be achieved. Service delivery, alternative methods, we are fully convinced from pilots that we have implemented, for example, the Innovation Partnership for Rural Development Program pilots around sanitation and community-based schemes to deliver sanitation and maintain sanitation in schools can create a whole lot of jobs. Renewable energy, community off-grid energy schemes for communities to be able to sell electricity back to municipalities. How do we design those models? But there are clear cases. Innovators and entrepreneurs who've got ideas. There's a grassroots innovation program. How do we then scale up these programs in municipalities and with a focus for inclusivity using the DDM as a platform? I think that's the case that we are making. And then lastly, Chair, we've got a number of municipalities who expressed interest to participate on our program called the VVISDP program, Viability Innovation for Service Delivery. We've got about 34 municipalities that we are partnering with, and we received expressions of interest of 108 written expressions of interest. So this is a clear indication that municipalities themselves are becoming part of the national system of innovation. Municipalities themselves are embracing innovation, but how do you bring together all the components of the national system of innovation into the district development model to work with municipalities? And how do municipalities themselves be drivers and enablers of innovation? Just to conclude, Chair, in essence, there is exclusion because you've got the high rates of people who are unemployment, you've got who are unemployed and high rates of unemployment, you've got income inequalities and the income distribution disparities, between provinces, Gauteng, Durban versus other provinces, Northern Cape, and even Cape Town, and the stagnant economic growth and the high rates of unemployment. How do we get innovation positioned in the district development model to respond to this? Hence our case for inclusivity as an area of focus, innovation as an area of focus in municipalities. And the biggest limitation we have is also from a policy perspective. Current policies, how can we really increase inclusion of the marginalized through innovation using DDM as a platform? We believe there are 4 critical areas. I made some examples around drones, but if you look at ride-hailing applications like Uber-like platforms, that can also create massive employment opportunities. But how do we position these things and inclusivity? The green circular economy has got massive potential for absorption of unemployed youth. How do we position this circular economy in programs and as inclusion programs via district development as a platform? So in conclusion, we really would like to know how can we evolve the model, how can we place attention to the case we are making about inclusivity in the district development model, but the model itself, how can it be innovated? How can it be evolved? What are the next iterations of the model? But how do we make sure the model, over and above anything else, it is responsive to unemployment, inequalities, and poverty? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks a lot, Ephraim and Sepang, for that presentation. It was really nice to bring, this discussion to closer to home, to the grassroots, and also just giving an overview of the spread country-wise using your GIS presentation there. That really, gave a good outline, and I think it already started addressing some of the questions that have been raised regarding, the provincial spread of your projects in South Africa. You kept on emphasizing the issue of youth unemployment and the fact that in order for the DDM to be successful, one of the measures will be its influence in reducing unemployment. And you went on to highlight a number of cases which you've either invested in or partnered in that actually have been coming to fruition in municipal municipality government levels. One of the aspects from my side that that I think didn't come out just as a question clearly was the contribution of those projects, to alleviating the extent of unemployment in South Africa. I don't know if you do have that information. Especially for the projects that you highlighted around hydropower, around ICT infrastructure that you've supported, other jobs created, or I didn't catch that. Thanks.
Well, Chair, we can always share the numbers. I was just illustrating a point that innovation can also help achieve inclusivity. It was just a few of examples that I was sharing with you. The GIP program is helping young people commercialize their products. We've invested over 20 million there. The project is at a tier. 100 beneficiaries have gone through that program. Last year, about 10 products went to the market. We're aiming about 500. But we can't do these things alone as DSI. how do we fund that grassroots at scale? It's just for now, it has seed funding from the DSI. So how do we fund innovation, similar innovation initiatives? It may not be the grassroots, it may be something else in a Tegwini, which is similar to grassroots, but then you bring in other partners and you drive these at scales. You bring in what you call private sector partnerships on drones. Again, starting these things very small, piloting them and scaling them up, and say, on drones, we want 2,000 unemployed young people to be assemblers, to be component system suppliers for drones, to be designing sensors for different use case and applications of drones in the country, around floods, around crime, around detecting infrastructure, whatever the case may be. So we've got some illustrations here, but how do we expand this at a district level, but use the platform of the DDM?
Thanks a lot, Ephraim, for that response. At this stage, I do not see any hands raised, but there's a question in the chat box from George Shole, who's asking if it would be possible to share some data on agricultural projects. I think having the emails of the DSI colleagues, specifically Ephraim and Sepang, I'm sure you can be able to contact them directly, because the various sectors that they went through, there were some on agriculture as well. So I would encourage George to engage the colleagues directly via email or in any other method. In the Q&A box, I do not see any questions at this stage that have been raised. Some of them, the presentation actually went on to address, but Ephraim and Sepang, if you can just visit the Q&A so that you can attend to some of the questions that I may have missed. In the interest of time, colleagues, I would like us to stream along and invite further presentations from the Human Sciences and Research Council, specifically Dr. Kombi Sawusi and colleague Dr. Yul Derek David, who are going to present also their research with regards to the DDM model and some case studies. I see Dr. David is already there. I think I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and we'd like to thank DSI for inviting us to this presentation. My colleague, Dr. Susie, will join me for the presentation. Kombi, can you just share the screen? I will do a brief introduction, and then Kombi will take us through the details of our study. Next slide, Kombi. So just to give some background, and I know we've had a great deal of background about the district development model, but again, just to emphasize, I mean, it was implemented really to bring about inclusive economic growth, spatial transformation, strategic infrastructure investment, really to also help with service delivery. And I think this was
Apologies, Dr. David.
Sorry.
Okay, no, sorry. Now it's on presentation mode. Thanks a lot. I would
Yeah.
like to request that it be put on presentation mode. You can proceed, please.
Excuse me, sorry then. Okay. That's the second point. I mean, why is it important? And I think we all know this current situation in the country, the levels of unemployment, the high inequality rate. So there's numerous reports that highlighted and studies that highlighted the state of governance and the need for transformation in South Africa. I mean, we all know about the unprecedented service delivery strikes and protests for people, you know, that want a better life. And I think that's important for us to emphasize that. And a great deal of this can be attributed to an uneven distribution between the capacity between national, provincial, and local sphere of government. But there's also many other causes, of course, for this current situation. And it's in this background and you know, previous presentations as well that, you know, government and the president felt the need to implement the district development model. Now, our study will reflect on, you know, the pilot study that was already conducted, but we will mainly present findings from our study that was, or that is currently still busy being concluded, but it started in September 2021. and up to now. So this falls in place almost with the pilot study and also the institutionalization of the DDM and the three municipalities. Next slide. So our study also focused on the three municipalities, which is eThekwini, and you all know, Waterberg and Tambo District Municipality. And what we essentially did in terms of our scope, aim, and objectives was to conduct a desktop analysis and an empirical study on the practical workings of DDM within these municipalities. So we physically went out and, conducted key informant interviews with municipal officials and some key stakeholders. And in addition to that we also then draw on a literature review across the region and in international experiences. We've heard about the UK this morning, but we've also looked in particular of work done in Ethiopia. And just to summarize then our research approach, we've done a review of literature. We also looked at the available documents that's available, and then we did primary research. So we've used this then to, formulate our findings and to base our findings on. We will produce, we have an inception report, we will produce a project report, and out of that we will have a number of publications that will emerge from the study, like policy briefs and peer review articles. Next slide, Corby. So some of the key research questions that we wanted to address, apart from looking at the district development model in detail, was to see how the National Development Plan, the Provincial Development Strategy, and DDM integrate seamlessly. So these were some of the key concerns. Another key issue that participants already reflected, we want to see how are the interests of residents and the people themselves are reflected in the DDM and long-term structural plans, whether it's the integrated development plans, the built environment plans, and the service delivery improvement plans. How are other stakeholders, in particularly the community from a bottom-up, being incorporated in this approach? And this follows on my next point, the community involvement also in monitoring and evaluation of the work. Are they incorporated? And then a next other important question that we look at, what is the support from private sector, overseas aid agencies and non-state agencies to aid the implementation of the district development model? And then finally, we also wanted to look at what are the data and indicators that are being planned and can be used to monitor, also the success of the district development model. So my colleague will now reflect briefly on the literature review, and then specifically speak to some of the experiences and the findings that we've picked up in these areas, and then also present some of our initial recommendations. Thank you. Corby, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Chair. Yes, and I think this is a reflection, and as all the colleagues have already mentioned through several presentations, the idea is how can we, I think, to just put it in a simple way, is how can we simplify the language that government use, or simplify service delivery to communities? And for us, I think that becomes key as to how we look at innovation. What are some of the innovative ideas that government can come up with in terms of addressing some of the issues at the grassroots level, and so that the marginalized also their issues are really responded to. And I think Sophie really covered a wide range of international experience that we also touched on, like looking at examples in Ghana, looking at example in Uganda, and the example in Kenya and India, whereby this sort of district-centered development has really been very critical to the way to the way we approach things, to the way that some of these governments have really responded to issues of development in their respective countries. And I think that the region itself has proven that really the district-centered development, it is a success. If you look at the industrial base, agricultural base in model in Ethiopia, for instance, it has yielded a lot of positive results. And if you look at some of the outcome of the district-centered model in Uganda, for instance, whereby multiple sectors of government will really work together to resolve issues at the grassroots level, there are a lot of positive results. But again, this brings us to the issue whereby you look at the current status of how government operates, where every level of government has really their own ways of doing things, and this really put us in a position whereby there is no cohesion. And it becomes very important that how can we make sure that there is a way of working, that there is clear cohesion, and there is that you look at the space of district as a bottom-up approach to really address some of these issues. But other than that, if you look at if you go directly to public servant, for instance, and try to look at assessment of service delivery improvement programs, these are issues that public servants really understand very well. And what sometimes becomes a barrier is this multiplicity of planning that are not really talking to each other, and that really mostly have a negative impact on how the programs can be implemented and the services be delivered to communities. And the key here becomes that how can we align all these programs? How can we align APP's provincial strategies and service delivery improvement model, so that there is synergy, they all talk to each other and be able to really respond to some of the issues at the grassroots level. And that becomes the critical issue that we really hope that the district development model is trying to answer, and say that, no, if we all work together towards this one plan, then it should be the budgeting model changing the budgeting model, whereby the space becomes the main thing that budgeting is based on. It will be easy to see all the department really trying to create programs that are responsive and programs that really address the issues that are in the district or the specific spaces that the departments are dealing with. But again, as some of these guidelines being there, and they become a little bit onerous, because it's and as I started that, no, how can we simplify this? How can we really make sure that there are guidelines that are really easy to understand? And I think that it becomes one thing that in the way, I think, looking at this specific session, for instance, where we say that DDM being a center, an answer to some of the innovative ways of responding to government service delivery challenges, I think that, again, it becomes very important that how do we capacitate public officials to understand the model itself? Because and that became one of the key issues that yes, we do, even in the pilot provinces, districts, it is still very difficult to find the synergies whereby the model is now understood by different departments that are operating within that specific space. So that's really important. And again, as we say that it is a long-term strategy, and I think that's what I was earlier on mentioning, that government should start thinking beyond the 5-year plan, whereby when there is a new leadership, most of the time you'll find that the new leadership will come with its own ideas and then sort of sideline the ideas that were already being implemented by the previous leadership. But with institutionalizing the district development model, then it will give the leadership that comes in beyond the 5 years to also continue with plans and programs that have been put in place for these specific districts, for the specific space. And then each and every one of these 52 spaces one should be able to zoom in and really look at, if when you're doing your annual performance plan, you should be able to zoom in and see that, a specific department, what are they doing in this space, and for how long is this project going on? What are some of the outcomes that this project really is starting to produce within a specific space? And in that way, it will really become easy, and within beyond the 5-year period term of an administration, the leadership that comes in can still continue with the legacy of what the previous one would have planned. But again, I think this, we cannot emphasize this in a more than we really this becomes a critical thing, that DDM is central to intergovernmental relations, and the only way that we can really make it to work is if we strengthen our intergovernmental relations, and making sure that planning from the onset between province, between national and local municipalities or districts are really centered towards the one plan. The one plan becomes central to what these plans are supposed to do. Because if that is not the case, and if there is no cohesion and very good discussion between the different spheres of government, then it will become very difficult to even achieve the idea of the district development model. So that is really crucial here as a status. Hence, we say that the primary consent at the moment, you still find like there are a lot of plans that are that provinces, department, sector department have, but which are really not yet speaking to each other in a cohesive manner to really be able to implement the district development model. Then I'll move on then to zoom into specifics, especially with different sites that we visited. And I think this has been mentioned as in the CSR presentation, saying that different sites are coming up with different innovative ideas in terms of how do they address some of the economic recovery, specifically post COVID-19. And how can this be really included in the One Plan program? And if we look at the Eastern Cape is specifically focusing on infrastructure development, industrialization, equitable and inclusive transformation, digital transformation, public finance. But I think then here, what then becomes the advantage of the DDM and the model itself, when in the planning of the DDM in the Eastern Cape, is where it is start to look at some of the issues that by profiling the district itself, it gave a clear understanding of what is it that it can be done to really resolve some of these issues. For instance, already there is, you'll find it already working on the green economy, whereby the recycling center in Kumbu is really a center that is training the youth, is creating employment, and also encouraging cleanliness and recycling within the district itself. And I think the one thing that we will observe again that becomes the advantage of the DDM and the way of thinking that to really change the moving forward is becomes that through the COGTA's profiling of the DD of the OR Tambo, for instance, it was noticed that 35% of the youth are unemployed, and then so 8% of the youth between the age of 30 who are under the age of 34, and most of those are not in school. But the issue now becomes that when you look at the Eastern Cape itself, it is a coastal province, and then other than being a coastal province, the universities, the local universities, they were not offering some of the like ocean, tapping into the ocean economy, like looking at some program that really can assist that. Tourism, it is a vast province that really has a lot of potentials in terms of tourism, and also agriculture. But these are some of the things that they were really not. There were not that much of a focus in terms of how to develop to improve the economy of the province. But through the consultation and through working then innovatively, then start looking at how can we create sectors that agro-processing businesses, for instance, and working with local communities to really develop some of these sectors and then really absorb the youth and within some of these coastal economies, that becomes one that really become relevant, important to that. Then again, the DDM, I think, if there is good alignment of sector department, it helps in terms of creating skills development that are really responding to people's need. Because what was noted is you find that different departments will come in the district, and which they'll come into specific space whereby they'll offer training, and you might really notice that 2 or 3 departments are offering same training to within the same space, of which if there is discussion within the sector department, it will be easy for them to really plan cohesively in terms of how to respond to the needs of communities within these areas. So I think then the other thing that we can say that, again, it's one of what you'll look at a positive case within Waterberg, for instance, where noted that tourism was there was a slow response to return to tourism activities within the area. And then it was noted that some of the issues within at the Bakwena Toll Plaza, because of the delays that was causing traffic and the fear that people had in terms of COVID transmission. But just through consultation, again, with different stakeholders and engaging different stakeholders, it was noted that if there is a contactless payment, then that might assist in terms of attracting tourism and allowing the traffic flow within the district. And just that change itself of collaborating with different stakeholders so return to tourism again, to tourism activities in the area. But I think the one other thing that one has to mention again regarding Waterberg, it becomes the issue of who is in the tourism sector and how can we really open, like looking at the national department, how can it really make sure that it creates opportunities to Black entrepreneurs and to also get involved in the tourism sector within that space. And that is one thing that we picked, and that the model itself and the idea really came up, picked in the process of developing the one plan in Waterberg district. So I think, again, I'll go back to another good example, especially in eThekwini, whereby looking at the Konobia, for instance, in eThekwini, the project that brings different departments working together in terms of saying that to create an economic development that respond to the needs of people, but that is really encompassing. And I think those are some of the things that we're talking about in terms of saying that no, the DDM should really be a model that brings change and that shows that the planning moving forward, it is inclusive and innovative at the same time, and how to really respond to the marginalized. And I think to the need of the marginalized. And this is the one good example whereby this development really brings all the different departments, human settlement, education, all of them to really say that no, and private sectors together and say that to develop this, to work on this development, we need a mix of development whereby it's not only that people will walk long distances to go to work, but there is also low-cost housing embedded within the very same development, whereby and people can easily move to their workspaces without spending a lot on transport. But again, this then brings us to another point that then you look forward and say that no, in the way of thinking that we need to move from, DDM should allow us to move from apartheid spatial planning, and specifically dealing with the issues of inequalities that spatial planning, apartheid spatial planning brought. Because if you look at how cities are designed at the moment, I think we haven't moved that far from that spatial apartheid spatial planning, whereby if you go to any major city, you can easily look at the disparities between the affluent areas and the low and the informal settlement. But how can we have integrated cities whereby people living low income, people living in informal settlement can easily move from where they are to move to areas where specifically CBDs without where they will find employment without really spending an arm and without spending a lot of money on their transportation that will then take a chunk from their income. And that's how I think the thinking should move around, whereby when we're developing this one plan, this big project of around one plan, we need to really look at the needs of the people should really be central to that in terms of making sure that we break the divide between the apartheid spatial planning and respond to we have a new way of planning that really addresses some of those issues. And I think, again, so how can we really make sure that we have an integrated planning model that we have we have hubs that have easy access to transportation. We have hubs that really have internet access that where people can easily get internet access in terms of looking for employment. And in case of having some development like access to water, access to sanitation, what are some of the innovative ways that even people within certain areas can easily have that? Because I'll give a simple example, and I think it was mentioned, I think, by Ephraim in terms of how, when we plan, let us look at issues of disaster, for instance, moving forward. If you look at, if we give a simple example about Etequini after the flooding, the areas with good infrastructures already, I think they only went out of water for at most 2 weeks. But areas that are really that you find in the informal settlement, even now, some of them still don't have water, and that is the main problem. It becomes it's either aging infrastructure or infrastructure that are really not well developed. But within the affluent areas, already water is restored, electricity is restored. Meanwhile, in some of these in informal areas, these very same services have not been restored as yet. So then, how do we create zones that really will really have these services integrated in a way that one area does not really benefit better than the other one? Okay, then I think. So then when we reflect on some of these things, so we think that where if well implemented, the one plan really it will change how you budget and how you really bring in development within a specific space, within a specific district. And then some of the challenges is, again, is what was mentioned, that national, provincial, and local need to work together. I think party politics and political dynamics really need to be really looked at, and also look at political maturity, rationalize the role and responsibility, also consolidate community engagement. We really need to get good community engagement, and they will look at the role of presidential coordinating council in terms of the district, at the district level. So my final slide then looks at the mitigation. So we need to develop a single plan by national provincial government. So address political dynamics when developing a single plan, and encourage political maturity and healthy contestation between provincial and municipal program. We need to rationalize the roles, also consolidate community engagement, then strengthen the presidential coordinating council within at the district level. Thanks.
Thank you, Drs. Davids and Sawusi, for that presentation. Those are the colleagues from the HSRC. You know, it was really nice to see how you've taken the DDM from a research perspective and identified some solutions which could be used or implemented to enhance the effectiveness of the DDM model. But you've also went on to highlight some of the challenges that you know, government, department, and its entities experience in terms of implementing the DDM model, sometimes being the misunderstandings in terms of the mandate between government departments, the shortage of capacity building initiatives, as well as high staff turnover, which can actually cripple initiatives that would have been initiated. I cannot see in the Q&A box specific questions regarding emanating from this presentation, but there's been a request from some of the attendees for you colleagues to share the presentation. They provided their contact details, so if you can kindly check the chat box. We are slightly running behind time, so considering that there's no hands that are raised and no questions in the Q&A, I would like to steam ahead, but thanks a lot, colleagues. I think to a large extent, if you do avail your presentation, some of the attendees are already suggesting some follow-up conversations. So I think your presentation already stimulates some potential for further conversations. So thanks a lot, Dr. Davids and Dr. Sawusi in that regard. I'd like to move on now and get a perspective from the Tshwane municipality. We have Mr. Isaiah Engelbrecht, who's the divisional head for innovation and knowledge management at this metro municipality, who will be giving the context from Tshwane with regards to the DDM. Mr. Engelbrecht.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Twala. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Thank you. Audio and video are good. Thanks. You can proceed.
Thank you very much. Perhaps just a request for Dr. Komi to remove the slides, and then I'll upload mine. Well, then I'll share my screen. Just as we do that.
I will see, how do I exit this? And yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Or do you need some guidance with it?
Yeah, yes, you can, please. I just wanna.
I suspect you just go to share screen and it will give you the option to exit.
I thought I've already exited because it's still giving me the option to share. But let me, if I close it, is it Still, you can still see my screen.
It's still visible.
Yeah,
on
no,
my
no,
side.
I got it. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So yeah, Dr. Twala, please, I'm visiting at TUT at one of the incubators. So, but the network seems to be stable, and let me know if it's too noisy, then I'll try and speak to some of the colleagues. My presentation today is very specific. I was requested to just give a perspective on the City of Tshwane's journey around innovation. And let me just share and first check if my slides are available, visible to you.
Yes, yeah, and it's in presentation mode. Please proceed. Thanks.
Perfect. So I really just going to share some highlights in terms of our journey, and perhaps at some point in the future, we can go into a more detailed engagement, perhaps to share some lessons learned and learn from each other. My time slot is 15 minutes. I'm going to aim to deliver this presentation in about 13 or 14 minutes max. And really just two things important to mention. What I'm sharing here is mostly around the internal innovation machinery within the city that we had to develop in order to get value from innovation. I also make a point that we are not there yet. We have still have many challenges, but we've managed to achieve some successes. And you would see a lot of the things, or most of the things, in fact, that I'll be discussing is a first in a municipality. And that speaks to the fact that the challenge and the difficulty with setting up innovation machinery or capability within the municipality. So the first important thing for us was really to say we have 5 strategic pillars in the city. And when we developed our innovation strategy, it was quite important for us to align to these pillars. Now, also when we embarked on the journey, our team's knowledge management, innovation, and continuous improvement, we had to ask ourselves a critical question as to the effect of understanding why we exist as a division. Why should anyone care that we come to work every day, and what difference do we bring to the municipality? So in a nutshell, we came up with a statement to say we really believe in the creative power of our people, Tshwane residents, citizens, and employees. And it's our job to create the platforms that will allow for the in and outflow of ideas, knowledge that will result into implementable value-adding service delivery solutions. This was quite important for us to anchor what we deliver in the city. Just quickly, key problems to solve. We're saying within our citizens, our people, there's a sleeping giant, a sleeping lion, and we need to awaken the spirit of innovation and creativity through some of the activities that we practice. In other words, turning the knowledge, ideas into value. We know the service delivery challenges, but here's the thing, quite often, we find that people protesting, when you engage them, you find that in some of them, they actually have solutions to the problems that they're protesting about. So it's quite important for us to build bridges between those people, those ideas, and the municipality to try and implement those. Furthermore, another pain point is municipalities, organizations are busy. So on the left, you have someone with innovative solutions to fast-track service delivery, but the organization is busy and saying we don't have time for clever ideas. We have to set up the infrastructure for those people to be supported, that they can test and pilot the solution so that we get more results at local government and otherwise. Lastly, in terms of problems to be solved, many people often have ideas, but if the environment is not set up, they speak to a colleague, some of them are positive, some negative, no one can make a decision, it ends up with the executive, and the idea ends up in a black hole, as we say. So our job is really to mine the valuable ideas in the black hole, firstly, and then secondly, prevent more ideas ending up in that black hole and not adding value to service delivery. But it's quite important now, when we drive innovation within the city, it has to align with the city's planning processes. And therefore, what we do is quite integrated in the city's planning processes. For instance, when we deal with performance management, we had said we need to measure what's called innovation capability. In this case, speak about 4 pillars: culture, implementation, collaboration, and leadership ambition. The sum of this, the average of that, speaks about innovation capability. Capability then speaks about the level of enablement in the municipality for innovation to take place. So we did some measurements and we're tracking this to make sure that we are really making a difference in preparing the environment for innovation to happen. When we speak about innovation capability, we are saying the following. If we look at this tree, on the left, we see nice red apples and leaves. People speak about the results of innovation, and there's a lot of excitement within that to say, this is what we achieved. But quite often what leaders don't see or forget about is what's on the right, the branches. You need those branches to have the fruit of innovation. In this case, it speaks about innovation capability, enablement. That's the like of culture, implementation, collaboration. So our team is largely focusing on building those branches, so to speak. In a nutshell, this is our journey in terms of innovation capability. 2014, 44%, and you would see 2016-18, not a major improvement, and we identified it as a risk because it means we may have the people with the ideas and want to innovate, but the environment is not fully enabled to support them. Based on that, we set a target of achieving a 54.75% innovation capability by last year. We haven't measured, we'll measure later in the year to see how far we've come on the journey. Now, in terms of innovation capability, there's ISO 56000 standards now, as most of you would know. We had to develop our strategy in the context in terms of the ISO standards that's been released. And that brought us then to the city's current approved innovation strategy that we are reviewing. And it consists of 4 key pillars that I'll quickly share with you now. But at the heart of it, we are saying we need to position the city of Tshwane as the innovation capital. And we're not simply just saying that there's fact and reason behind it that we cannot engage on at the moment because of time. But the first pillar, we're saying for innovation to happen at local government level, we have to ignite what we call the multi-helix innovation ecosystem. This speaks about strong partnerships and collaboration. And we've done quite a few things, but the one example I'd like to share with you is where we're saying the city becomes a seeker of innovative solutions, a typical open innovation model. So we develop these and we put it out there to the Tshwane-based universities, the 3 TUT, UNISA, and UP. Through a platform, we received some results, and then really this was a very exciting experience to co-create new service delivery-based solutions. And phenomenal results. 12 new businesses were registered through this initiative, and quite a few of those projects are currently being incubated within the Innovation Hub and Tax Innovation. And what we're saying is, once those solutions are ready to be piloted in the city, we will open our doors for those students to test the solutions, because we really need to implement them. And it mustn't just simply end at a point where you've identified the top ideas. The project then extended internationally. We trained the students on blue ocean methodologies. That led to us, in partnerships with many others, including the DSI, hosting the first Blue Ocean Awards last year in partnership with the French Embassy. And subsequently, earlier this year, a CPSI award recognizing the partnerships that's been established to build new solutions. This picture is quite important. It speaks about collaboration between national and local government, where we have the Deputy Minister at the DPSA, Dr. Pilani Majake, with the Mayor of Ekurhuleni and our acting mayor at the time, speaking about the award we've just won. And creating, I guess, a level of competition and support at this level. But arguably, this is probably the more important picture. What we see in front of us is really the collaboration that led to the results. Here we have UNISA, TUT, UP, Innovation Hub, French Embassy, and many others. And this team came together to build the bridges for innovation to flow, to answer that why statement that I shared earlier. And it's complex to put this in place, but it's our responsibility to build this in partnership so that many of the actors and the students and anyone that want to participate can actually then bring results through innovation. The second pillar, very briefly, speaks about setting up governance structures for responsible innovation. And within the city of Tshwane, we had to do quite a few things. The first was a sub-EXCO steering committee to oversee innovation in the city. But at the employee level, it was as important to invite people across the city to participate as innovation champions in the city. This is a picture of the first intake. I think we ended up with 22 innovation champions. And in their role across the city, and the numbers nowhere close where we need to be, is really to facilitate innovation across the city in the departments where they function. We've trained them in partnership with the CPSI School of Government, preparing them to assist the innovation team. Just a quick point, there was someone earlier, a young man that asked a question around ideas from youngsters. We have put in place in the city what's called Pitch Pot. And again, it's not working perfectly yet, but on a monthly basis, we open our doors for people to come and present their ideas to the city. And if there's merit, the internal team will assist in building a business case to pilot that solution within the city. There's an idea management platform, quite important to manage ideas in the city. And the issue of co-creation, we take it quite serious. In this case, the platform that we use for innovation challenges, we use to get input from employees in terms of what do they deem as the bottlenecks for innovation within the city. Excellent results received. And as we review the strategy now, we take those points in, and within 3 or 4 months, we'll have the updated strategy. And then I think lastly on this pillar is, as a city, we managed to approve our intellectual property policy. It is quite important because it defines the rules of engagement when we engage with partners, entrepreneurs, etc. I was told that it's the first NIPMO endorsed IP policy in local government, but I stand corrected. The challenge is it's approved, but we're now working at mainstreaming this in the municipality. And this is hard work to do that, but we're pursuing that at the moment. The third pillar is where we say we're positioning the city as a platform. The city is not the best place for entrepreneurs or citizens to request money for their projects or their pilots, but certainly where we can help is to open our doors if entrepreneurs need platforms, access to 100 households or water assets or electricity or bus services. And we've done quite a few pilots in the space successfully. And that's the value add that we see we can actually give to citizens and entrepreneurs in the city. To that effect, just some examples, which I won't discuss today, is we've ran quite a few pilots, clearly understood the problems and objectives, and then summarized the achievements. We have case studies on these as well. And it was real projects, in this case, Tshwane Safety App, where citizens could link up with the Tshwane Metro Police directly, e-government app, public participation. And I think what's quite important, the linkage with local, provincial, and national government. These were funded by the DPSA. And I think it speaks to the importance of these partnerships to make things happen. Then we had a bike sharing app in partnership with the University of Pretoria. Very interesting results, but the spin-offs with some of these projects are exciting. In this case, a group of students rented these bikes on a daily basis, and they started a food delivery service using these bicycles. And that was a very interesting spin-off because we wanted only to test the bike sharing app. And some of these students then actually started business ventures around it. Then Year Screen was really just a rapid way to test hearing. And this was also a very good example in partnership with Province. And out of this, close to 13,000 people, students, scholars especially, hearing tests were conducted. But here's the interesting thing. apart from the people that were referred now for detailed hearing tests, quite a large group had an indication that the hearing was not up to scratch, suffering hearing loss. But upon investigation, it was really just a buildup of wax, and many of these were kids. Clearing out the wax, they could suddenly hear better in class, and significant impact than that we've seen from there. This is urban farming, rooftop farming that's currently being rolled out. And the fourth pillar just speaks about the Balanced Innovation Project portfolio. Malusi, I'm landing this presentation now. So the saying that you need to have a balanced innovation portfolio, meaning that you have to cut across sectors in the incubation that you do, but also across horizon, the municipality of today, tomorrow, and the future. And there's some examples of how we target and work with youth and the schools. This is the Fab Lab initiative. And with this slide, I'm simply saying, on the left, you have people and they have ideas, and that's the knowledge. And our role then, as leaders in innovation, is to translate those ideas, that knowledge, into value. I've got 2-3 quick points to make on this one. We're embarking on a few new initiatives. The second one is interesting, which I'm quite excited about, with the DPSI expanding our living labs. And then lastly on this one is the Municipal Innovation Maturity Index, where I have to thank once again the DSI taking leadership on this. We're working closely, and this, I think, will add a lot of value to the DDM models because it speaks about innovation capability across municipalities in the country. In conclusion, that's our strategy aligned with the ISO standards. And that really resulted in us a month ago winning a South African Innovation League award for the work done in terms of building innovation capability. But of course, we have many challenges, and there's two I need to highlight. From a resource point of view, people, and especially finance. And that's why I'm quite excited about the project that Dr. Mbaneni is leading around the Innovation Fund. And yeah, let me leave it there. So we're targeting 54%. And as my last slide, I'm simply saying we started at 44%. We're currently hovering around 50%. Speaking about the rate at which we turn knowledge into value. Once we get to 2030 above 70%, we're hoping that we'll be running flat out. Thank you, sir. I think I did manage to do it within time. It was a lot to say, and then hopefully it made sense. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Isaiah. I think, you know, with presentations today, it's really difficult to stop people because there's quite a lot of exciting, you know, case studies and examples, and you've highlighted, you know, some from the city that you've realized. You know, from my side, just as a comment, I like your emphasis, or the city's emphasis, on co-creation and partnerships, because resources, you know, may not be adequately be available from, you know, one entity. So it's really important to establish partnerships and co-create, you know, some of these solutions. The city of Tshwane, especially around the commercial zones, has got a problem with regards to traffic flow, as an example. And the e-bucks solution around Hatfield, I just saw that when you're talking about the University of Pretoria, that there's an issue around Hatfield, and maybe this could alleviate the challenge that we are facing there. Colleagues, I do not see any raised hands from my side. I don't know, those who are hosting, if they can see any hands raised. I've also browsed through the chat box. It's mainly comments, and it's nice to see Tato has been quite engaged in our seminar today, continuously giving questions and responses. So we highly appreciate your participation there, Tato. This is really an engagement a session, and the DSI brought us here today so that we can, we can engage, and it's nice also to see that some have proposed, post meetings after this. So that is highly welcome. I'll request, Isaiah, that you do visit the Q&A box to just check if there were any questions that were raised directly to you that I may have missed. In the interest of time, I would like to invite the presentation from the CSIR, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Mr. Gerbrand Mans, who's the research group leader for urban and regional planning. Over to you, Mr. Mans.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Let me just switch on my screen sharing.
Your audio and video are good.
Thank you. Can you see the presentation, or do you see the slide view?
Not yet. Possibly it's coming through shortly. For now, I can, from my side, I can only see you, not your presentation.
Okay, let me.
There you go. Something is happening now. Yes, now your presentation is visible. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Are you seeing the presentation itself, not the slides, not the slide transition?
Well, it's the presentation, but I think it's your screen that we're seeing, because it's also showing the next slide.
Well, okay. Yes, no, that's what I'm asking. Just change that.
We are good now, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, thanks everyone. Yeah, so I'm going to present on the DDM Impact Simulator, the project concept that we have with DSI. So we've recently started with the project with DSI. So this presentation will focus on what the intention of this is, but I'll start off just by placing it in the context of the district development model and the discussions. So necessarily the problem that we sit with in terms of the investment that's happening in South Africa and the different development initiatives is that the whole seems to remain less than the sum of the parts with the planning processes. And it is quite complex with the planning processes happening at the local government level, and seeing to it that all of these different initiatives then nest and combine to actually produce the results that one would like to see within the country. So necessarily we still see to a large extent poverty, unemployment, inequality that persists at a local level, at a local municipal level. There are municipalities that where things are going well. I think that the metros are also sometimes a bit of an exception, but if you look in general, it is still a situation that we sit with in the country. If you look at the district development model concept, there is a big focus on coordinated planning, integration, linking different initiatives, and that's where the whole concept came from. But we still sit with a large extent of spatial and temporal misalignment in the planning processes. So are we in the wrong place at the wrong time? Are we in the wrong place at the right time with what we're doing? The right place, but wrong timing, etc. And what we want to get to is to get to the right place at the right time with the interventions that we want to do. And that is the principles of the district development model. But is there then a way of actually testing in terms of the plans that people are putting on the table? Is there a way of testing that and seeing that we are moving in the right direction? I think there's been a comment in the previous presentation that if you have a plan now and you implement that, it does take a couple of years before you know if the decision that you've made today will actually lead to the results. You will only see in about 3, 4, 5 years, maybe even longer term, whether the right decision was made today in terms of the realization of these things. So those are the things that we're keeping in mind in the context of this project and what we're trying to achieve. So an element of the district development model is to capture the intervention commitments. There's also been a presentation and some examples that DSI has shown on that. the processes that's going with that. And many of these investments, it is geared towards stimulating growth and development at a local municipal level, but then also necessarily throughout a particular district where we want that level of coordination. So the objective is to develop a geospatial platform to simulate the impact of existing and planned projects. And that impact that we want to look at is on the socioeconomic circumstances, the economic growth, and then within a particular municipality or district. And with the economic growth, then specifically focus on job creation and skills development, and seeing what changes, whatever is planned or initiatives are in the pipeline, what impact that will have on job creation and skills development. And then also basic service delivery, because necessarily we do need that facilitating environment to function well in order for the innovation and the implementation and the economic growth to happen within a municipal space. So the district development, the impact simulator will be primarily dependent on the DSI DDM interventions and the data that's being collected in that process through the various surveys in those impact areas that the DSI is focusing on in terms of the DDM. The slide is a bit busy, so I'll just try and take you through it as simply as possible. But again, it's just the context and our thinking around the district development model. What's the unique contribution, and then where do we position this work that we will be doing? So if you look at the slide and you look on the right-hand side, we have the municipal space, and that's where the DDM started off as well, is just profiling that space, just understanding what does this district look like, what does the different municipalities in this district look like from a demographic, economic, environmental perspective, and from a service delivery perspective, just to know what's happening there in that space. But it is things that these municipalities are used to. They do their SDFs, their IDPs, do it on yearly cycles. So they're used to that, but to get a coordinated view across the country for the districts. So we're aware of that, but what we want to highlight then in terms of the DDM and the contribution of the DDM and things that we want to highlight and what one wants to see stronger coming through is then all the things that we've highlighted in red on the slide, but I'll come back to that. So I'm just flagging that. So just look out for all the things that's been either highlighted in red or written in red on the slide. So if we look at municipal space and the profiling of that, it's also important to develop a future view of that particular district and the municipalities in it. So how will the demographics change? What's likely to happen with the economy? What's the implication of climate change? And what development and facilitating infrastructure do we need within that municipal space to take it to the vision that we want to achieve? And understanding that whole context is where the one plan then comes in. But okay, what does the one plan do? The one plan does position itself in a very complex space, because if we move to the middle of the slide, this summarizes all the basic infrastructure, that facilitating environment that needs to function well within a district or a local municipality. And that needs to be understood, but that's also where the relationship comes in with the other sectors and spheres of government. Because it's not as if these things are not happening. There are different sector departments, local municipalities responsible for these facilitating infrastructure that's busy maintaining, implementing this within that space. So we've tried to give a breakdown of what all of that facilitating infrastructure is, and then also at the abstract level to put it through to show which sector or sphere of government is responsible for that particular infrastructure. But that's not what we want to focus on. We just want to highlight that there is a status quo in terms of what this situation looks like currently, again, linking to the profiling, but then also the future. In terms of creating this facilitating environment for development, what is needed given this infrastructure? So this is, again, just something that we want to highlight from our perspective, is that additional futures view that one needs to bring in. So what of these different things are the most critical to create that facilitating environment moving into the future given the municipal context, and then having that district view, zooming into the local. And then if you move to the right, then the different spheres of government, but we're highlighting here is the district role, which needs to create this one plan which considers all of this. But what we're trying to say is, if you then look at the roles and responsibilities, and potentially where there are not always that bigger focus on the other sectors, sector plans, etc., is more a futures perspective, a focus more on economic development and the innovation that needs to stimulate that economic development within the municipal spaces. New ways of providing infrastructure or different infrastructure that's needed to stimulate that. And then a reflection of that in the one plan. So what we're saying is, for us, important in the one plan, not that it's all that it is, but it is a futures perspective, more developmental from economic point of view, and then getting that integrated governmental relations on infrastructure investment going, the principles in that. So then moving on to the next slide, the one plan pillars. I think that's been a slide that's come up in most of the presentations, so I'm not going to go into that. I think everybody is familiar with that. So what is the idea? What is it that we want to achieve in a nutshell? So we want to create a basic profile, and it's in existence, but we want to move that to an online platform of the current situation in the municipalities, collect as much information as we can get on the DDM initiatives and investments, the interventions that people want to implement in that space, and then to say, but okay, if we do that, what can the future most likely look like? So that baseline information, just to understand the current context, what information do we need to do that? So again, we are aware that a lot of this information has been gathered. It's just for us to go and get that again and package that then into the platform that we want to develop. But it's housing provision and delivery to get an understanding of that, access to basic services, bulk service provision, basic education and skills development, employment, economic production, and then critical social infrastructure and services to get an understanding of what the current situation is within a district, or then the local municipalities within that district. Social progress is necessarily a very important component of the DDM. It is an area where everything comes together, and where the measurement of that does become more tricky than just hard infrastructure on the ground or rands and cents from economic development point of view. So this is something that we still need to look into, if that's something that we bring in explicitly, but we do recognize that the social progress and the societal impact of things. So that's the baseline data for baseline profiles that we want to put together from what has already been done. And then also to look at the interventions to be captured and the impact then of those interventions once we've captured that to be modeled, to look at the implication for skills development, employment creation, economic activity, the shift in access to basic services, and the potential shift in the access to social infrastructure, education, and health necessarily being the most important there. Then moving on to the simulation process. So what does this mean? So I've already indicated those variables that we want to collect to create a current view, to say, okay, this is the current situation, the as is for a municipality or then the district, to capture the district development interventions that's in the pipeline, and that's coming through the one plans and then the initiatives by DSI to capture these investment initiatives. So there will be an interface that will facilitate the capturing of this information, and there's necessarily critical variables that one will need to capture around these interventions, budgets, implication for job creation, etc. But also to spatialize that. And again, DSI has already shown examples of where they've started to do that. So it's building further on that initiative and capturing that type of information. But then the value add comes in from a prediction modeling point of view. And that is where the innovation then from our side comes in, and the research and development to see if it's possible to then see we have certain interventions that will happen within this municipal spaces. Can we do certain predictions given all of that interventions to say, okay, what is the current skills level or employment levels within the municipality, and what will it most likely look like if we implement these interventions? And if that intervention that's planned then actually realizes as it's been envisioned at the moment. So it's about existing interventions, and I'll touch on it again a little bit later. But necessarily what this environment will then allow you is also to potentially play around with scenarios to not only capture interventions that is already decided on, but also to test interventions and see what the most likely impact will be for the future in a particular municipal space. So it is to move from the as is, just to know what that is, and can we move these dials and whistles moving into the future, and what movement will that provide us with given the interventions. Apologies, I'm just moving back to that one. So the DSI impact areas in relation to what we're doing. So in short, what we will measure is around skills development, employment creation, economic activity and opportunities, access to basic services, and access to social infrastructure. So necessarily these bullet points will have more information under them, but that's the essence of what we want to measure, to understand what it is currently, where we're moving with that. But then how does that relate to the DSI impact areas that has been presented on? And we've just shown the translation here. So skills development, employment, economic activity, that links up with life-changing opportunities and economic competitiveness and recovery as identified by DSI. Access to basic services and social infrastructure links up with the access to basic services and infrastructure as a critical element on the DSI side. Then societal problems, challenges, and decision support in that regard, that is the one, as I've indicated earlier on, that is more complex because of the interlinkages and the influence of different elements on each other, that we just need to see if it is possible to bring it into this concept. But again, it is important to recognize that and keep that in mind. The suggested study areas, so it is quite a task that we're taking on, and we are just going to start in selected study areas. The ones that have suggested, as the ones that have been suggested so far, is in Zululand, Westland, and Sedibeng. To collect the information, look at the interventions, and then to start to build the modeling interface for these areas. The resolution that we're looking at, so ideally one would like to see differentiation within municipalities, but given the task that we're taking on, for now we will focus on creating outputs per local municipality to just understand the current situation per local municipality and how things will most likely change within that local municipality moving into the future, and capturing that interventions, and the combination of the local municipalities will then also provide one with an aggregate view for the district then. Where the model will add value, I've alluded to this earlier on in the presentation. So the districts as well as the local municipalities can use this model in their planning and implementation processes. It's to capture interventions, and hopefully one can do it in such a streamlined process that it becomes a database of choice for municipalities to actually capture these interventions in. They can evaluate the impact of their current interventions, but then they can also evaluate alternatives. Even though it's not an initiative that's finally been decided on and a budget allocated and approved, one can add an initiative and just test what the potential implication will be before it goes into that approval process for implementation. And that's to get more insight on trade-offs and feed into longer-term plans and prioritization, then within the district and feed through to the local municipalities. Limitations. So the output resolution is at the local municipal level, like more detail. Modeling focus on a selection of variables, and I've presented on those in the beginning. And where I started off with the presentation, so a key theme, a central focus for us in these indicators is indicators around development, economic development and growth within the municipalities. And then to start off with specific case study areas, stakeholders, and I think this has been covered extensively and it stays the same. This is an all-of-government approach to get that coordination. So necessarily COCTA is pivotal in this, selected districts, the relevant local municipalities, and then all the sector departments. Then just the final slide on the process and deliverables. This is now more project specific. So we have to identify key stakeholders that we take with us on this journey in the development of this, to set up the system specifications in detail to allow the development of that. And then the system necessarily has to allow data capturing and create databases, visualize baseline data, do the simulation, and then also visualize the output from the modeling process, and then to be able to draw certain reports for distribution, or that the districts and the municipalities can then use. Through this system, a baseline indicator database will be established, a database on the interventions, and hopefully one can keep that live with the districts and municipalities continuing to capture the information in that. And then in the end, having the simulation model. That simulation model, one will have to socialize within the districts and local municipalities. In other words, the capacitation and the uptake of that. From that will be reports and planning implications that needs to be positioned with the municipalities, but over time, hopefully one can shift it so that the districts and municipalities work independently on drawing that from the system. Yeah, and like I said, hopefully to see to it that there's continuous use then of what we will establish through this project. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Brand, for that presentation. Your focus on monitoring and evaluation aspects was really, enticing, highlighting how these, can be implemented. Whilst we still have you, there is a question that I just picked up. How to measure the impact of all innovation stimulation activities that have been mentioned in the previous presentations is interesting. It seems to entail a lot of cross-cutting activities that is difficult to evaluate or model. Do you have a response on that, Gerben?
Sorry, I didn't catch when you read that. I'm just trying to find the comment. Was the comment or the question about all the different interventions and capturing all of that into this?
Yeah, basically there's cross-cutting activities, and the difficulty in evaluating or modeling the impact of those. If you've got a comment around that, it's in the chat box, not the Q&A, but it's just that one that popped quickly, and I thought maybe you might have a quick follow-up on that.
No, it is a challenge in terms of having to, because the DDM is so comprehensive or capturing everything that's happening in that municipal space, and that's where everything that government does comes together. So we will have to be selective, and that is why the primary angle will be to look at interventions that has got an impact on the economic development context, and hopefully one can get the information regarding these interventions in the appropriate format. To start to look at the implications, and then basic services, and then social infrastructure. So we try and contain it to those for the beginning, but with the recognition that the DDM is more comprehensive than just that. But and that's what I tried to show that with that busy slide with all the information on it. because it is the whole of government process that one is trying to coordinate here. What we try to highlight there is that there are key things that we feel that are potentially gaps in where the different roles and responsibilities of the different spheres and sectors of government sit. Yes, the DDM or the one plan needs to reflect on all of that, but where can it add value? And that's what we try to highlight there. And that, just looping back to what I just said, in terms of that economic development focus, then being one of the key things that we want to pull out and put more light on.
So now, thanks a lot for that follow-up comment. I do not see any hand that is raised on my side, and also there's nothing on the Q&A box. I think we can park it there for now, Mr. Brand. Thanks a lot. Unless if something pops up in the follow-up Q&A, which we'll try to have shortly. But for now, thanks a lot for the presentation, Mr. Mans.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. Just as a reminder to all the panelists, if you can kindly remember to send your presentations to Debuho with the intention that those can be availed to all the participants later on. If you haven't done so, I know some already did, but for those who haven't done so, kindly send your presentations to Debuho. We're supposed to have a Q&A, but based on the activity in the Q&A box, and also in the chat box, it doesn't seem like there's much activity, and I appreciate that it's been a long day, for most of us to be staying on here. And if you can permit me, since there's no hands raised for questions or follow-up comment, I would like to invite Ephraim for closing remarks. From my side, it's really been a nice, fruitful session that we've had today. I really cannot underscore the highlights of some of the presentations. Well, all the presentations, really. That is why it was even difficult from my side to actually stop when we're running out of time. The engagements that we received from all the attendees, we really appreciate it, because part of these engagements, the DSI is soliciting your inputs to actually shape the direction of innovation at local municipality level. But also, I think, especially coming from COGTA, it was nice to get that insight into the overview of how the various spheres of government play a role in the DDM, and how all this is centralized at district and metro level planning. So from my side, as the facilitator, I really think there was value in hosting this session. I think the DSI really did a good job in by covering various angles from government entities as well as government departments. And yeah, I really think also being evident of the chat box and Q&A, the activity that is there, a lot of people are just appreciating the value of the session today. So with that, Mr. Ephraim Palafala, if I can hand over to you for closing remarks, please.
Before you do that, Ephraim, could we just ask Gerard to stop sharing his screen? We're now viewing his personal emails.
Yes, I can see he's sending out emails. Gebrand?
My apologies.
Yeah, no problem. So thank you very much, Dr. Twala. Thanks for coordinating the session and making it on time. At the beginning, I was getting worried that we may not make it on time, because the presentations were really exciting, and there was no opportunity that you could stop the people. And we appreciate how you facilitated the session. You did a good job. So I want to pass my sincere appreciation to ASSAf for working behind the scenes, Dr. Mabota in absentia, because I know she indicated that she would not be available, and your Dr. Twala, Prof. Sudial, and other colleagues, Mevin and Renata. Thanks for coordinating this session. I think it was a success and it's a job well done. To the DSI colleagues, I think I would have to thank DDG Morphe for giving us the strategic context when it comes to the DDM in the department. Every time when we engage with COGTA, they want to understand how we want to institutionalize the DDM. And I got it from the presentation from Dr. Morphe that DSI is really trying to contextualize the DDM within the department. So thanks very much, Dr. Morphe, for the leadership and for the direction. Mr. Tsepang Musia, Precious and Portia, thanks for presenting the approach for the DSI. Everyone now understands exactly where we are going as the DSI. I could see even in the chats and in the questions that people were engaging with our presentations. So thanks very much. To Sophie West, she indicated that she's leaving, but I think we have to appreciate her presentation in absentia for providing us with the international perspective when it comes to district as centers for innovation. We really needed to understand that there could be an element where we could get an international perspective on districts as centers for ushering innovation, and she did a good job in doing that. And again, Mr. Ashley Lodge has left. He indicated that he has another meeting. But his presentation really gave us what the district development model is. We've been doing it internally in the department. It was good to get it from COGTA itself so that people do see what exactly is the district development model, where is it going, what are the targets and who are the stakeholders. So in absentia, we want to thank Mr. Lodge for that presentation. Gebrand, really appreciated for presenting the district development model, impact simulation model. We know it's still at the beginning, but what we have presented really gave the participants a sense of what it is that we are trying to develop, to try and to understand the impact that we made before we even implement the project. So we really appreciate it. To the colleagues in the HSRC, Dr. Saus and Dr. Derek, we appreciate your presentations you've made on the evaluation of the district development model in the pilot areas of Waterberg, Owertambo, and eThekwini municipality. We appreciate it a lot. And to the participants, this session will not have been a success without you. I think your engagement, your holding on, I can see we are still staying on 100 and something participants. So thanks very much for engaging with us. Thanks very much for the questions you've raised. We may not have answered them all, but others have requested for one-on-one sessions. We will make time and do one-on-one sessions, and where we were not able to answer your questions, we will still make time and respond to them by email. I did share my email address and Sepang's email address, and I know ASSAf is going to share the presentations with forward them to ASSAf. They will share them with all the participants, because I've seen a couple requests for presentations. We would, after this session, develop a report, and that report will also be shared with you, and then you will understand the direction we are trying to take as the DSI when we want to implement the district development model. With those words, I would like to thank you all and close the seminar and say have a good day further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ephraim. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to colleagues who are facilitating, the screening of this. Renate, Marvin, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye.